President Haley, we have quorum already.
Great. Thank you so much, Executive Director Ross. I believe we'll jump in, and this meeting is called to order at 10:08 or 9:08 a.m. Executive Director Ross, will you please call the roll?
President Haley?
Here.
Vice President Hagerman?
Here.
Superintendent Horn? Member Catanese?
Here.
Dr. Clay?
Here.
Dr. Cruz Rivera?
Here.
Member Haney?
Here.
Member Kravickas? President Haley, you have a quorum?
Fantastic. And just as a quick reminder, anytime we have votes, we'll just ask folks to unmute themselves, particularly those of us that are virtual. And I just respectfully request that we turn on our screens for those votes. I'm really excited about today's board meeting today. We are going to get an update on ESA, and we have nearly 103,000 kids participating in the program. And I'm excited to learn about how ADE is supporting families as they are helping them navigate their educational options, and looking forward to also the department's explanations around students with special education needs and helping them navigate their options to graduation. So looking forward to today's conversation, and also we'll be discussing A through F and how providing some additional guidance around the A through F letter grade. So it's going to be a busy meeting, and I'm really excited about the content. So many thanks to the team for getting us today, and for those that have prepared presentations for our discussion. So with that, I'm going to yield to the Superintendent Horn.
My report to this meeting is a big pleasure. I'm recognizing a Millikan Educator Award. I have a short paragraph that tells about the Millikan Educator Awards before I actually talk about our winner. And I've read it before, but I'm going to ask your patience to let me read it again, because we have a new winner. The Millikan Educator Awards, created by Lowell Millikan in 1987, have rewarded and inspired excellence in education by honoring top educators nationwide with $25,000. Not an accolade for lifetime achievement or the proverbial gold watch at the exit door, the Millikan Educator Awards target early to mid-career education professionals for their already impressive achievements, and more significantly for the promise of what they will accomplish in the future. And where's Bruce? There you are. Bruce is a Millikan winner, and he did show great accomplishments in the future. Recipients are surprised when the names are announced at emotional all-school assemblies in front of cheering students, proud colleagues, distinguished officials, and the media. The Millikan Educator Awards bring attention to these classroom heroes, serving once as validation, motivation, and inspiration to current and future quality educators. The message: we recognize you, we value you, we thank you. And I'll add, I go to most of them, and when I am able to be there, I participate in the following. We tell the students before we actually tell them who the winner is, that there is a winner in their midst, and that and we're going to give them a cash award. And we say, do you think they should get $250? And so we get a little applause. Then we say, well, how? So somebody holds up $250. So then we say, well, what do you think if we make it $250? We get a little more applause. Somebody holds up a zero to show $250. How about $2,500? Now we get very good applause, and somebody holds up a zero for the $2,500. And then if I'm present, I hold up the last zero that shows $25,000. Now they go crazy that the teacher's going to get $25,000. It's a very exciting assembly. And today we're honoring Angelica Garcia, where I was able to be present for that award. Angelica Garcia brings a calm, steady confidence to Westwood Elementary, where she is a self-starter who sees a need, finds solutions, and elevates everyone around her. As the school's academic coach, she supports teachers across kindergarten through fourth grade with positivity, humility, and deep instructional expertise. Whether preparing teams for instruction, motivating and supporting staff, or building school-wide systems, Garcia leads with heart and purpose every day. Garcia is known for transforming data into meaningful action. She guides teachers in analyzing student performance and using that information to drive instruction. It's exactly what we tell the schools to do, resulting in improved outcomes for learners across the school. In English language development, she oversaw high-intensity intervention cycles resulting in high growth. Through the district's adoption of the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching's learning standards as the foundation of student-centered coaching, Garcia has helped create a shared instructional language school and district-wide. Her one-on-one coaching is equally powerful, reflecting in the positive student outcomes from pre and post assessments. Garcia's leadership extends beyond coaching. She has served on the district's Essential Standards Committee led by the teacher assistant team and facilitated diverse professional development opportunities. She contributes to multiple school and district committees, mentors new teachers, and trains instructional assistants in intervention and testing systems. As a student council mentor, she connects students with leadership and service opportunities from morning announcements to campus beautification progress. In other words, she's a busy person. Garcia earned 2 degrees from Grand Canyon University, which I've always noted produces our best teachers, a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education in 2017, and a Master of Arts in Curriculum and Instruction in 2020. She also earned a Master of Education in Leadership of Pre-K-12 Educational Organizations from the American Intercontinental University in 2024. Congratulations to the 2025 Arizona Milken Educator, Angelica Garcia. Let's give her a really strong. We'll have a picture. Picture, that's wonderful. That concludes my report.
Well, with that, thank you so much. Congratulations. What an incredible recognition. I think given me being virtual, I'll have Vice President Hagerman sort of manage the day-to-day operations of the rest of the meeting. And with that, I will yield to you, Executive Director Ross, for your Executive Director report. What is typically the best part of the whole meeting?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As we do with every meeting, this is my favorite part, I think everybody's favorite part of the meeting, where we get to honor a couple of amazing, amazing kiddos from across the state. We have 2 such kiddos with us today. So up first, we have Allison Sullivan, who is a 5th grade student at John Q. Thomas Elementary School in Coconino County. Allison was nominated by her principal, Katrina Collins Hernandez. She serves as a student council president and is a campus role model, positively influences all those around her, is a natural leader, has a strong work ethic, and is described as authentic, compassionate, and kind. Allison, will you come join us?
Yaate she'e Alison Rose Sullivan Yanishye Eshihe Nishle Belagana Basishin Tachini Dasha Che Belagana Dasha Nala. Hi, I am Alison Rose Sullivan. I am of the Saw People clan, born for the White People clan. My maternal grandfather is Red running into the Water People clan. My paternal grandfather is the White People clan. I'm a fifth grader at Thomas Elementary in Flagstaff, Arizona. What I love about my school is it's a safe place where every student feels seen and heard. It truly is a place where every child belongs. Thomas teachers and staff empower us to learn, make good choices, and build us to become confident learners. My favorite thing about Thomas is the school spirit and school events that brings the community together. My accomplishments include Student Council President, Student of the Month of 3rd grade to 5th grade, Perfect Attendance, FUSD Native American Achievement Award, Coconino County Fair Art winners 1st and 2nd place, member of Thomas Choir, and most valuable player for girls youth basketball from Unlocked Potential. What helped me grow most as a student are my loving parents and supportive teachers. They taught me to stay organized, don't be afraid to ask questions, and to never give up. I plan to attend Sonagua Middle School, Flagstaff High School, and Northern Arizona University. I want to be a pediatrician when I grow up. I am honored to receive this reward and grateful for the recognition. I want to thank my principal, Ms. Collins Hernandez, for nominating me and believing me, and my teacher, Ms. Harrison, for your encouragement and inspiring me, and for my family for your love and guidance. Thank you.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have another amazing student from across the state. Serenity Chevroux is an 11th grade student at ASU Prep Digital in Maricopa County. She was nominated by her teacher, Graham Livingston. She's competed in multiple science and engineering fairs, is passionate about environmentalism, has received several recognitions for her commitment and engagement, is an active volunteer at a local food bank and has independently organized food drives, is nominated for the Governor's Volunteer Service Award and the President's Volunteer Service Award, and is described as intelligent, disciplined, and altruistic. Serenity?
Good morning, members of the Arizona State Board of Education and honored guests. My name is Srinidhi Charvu and I am a junior at ASU Prep Digital. It is truly an honor to be recognized as Student of the Month, and I would like to thank my teachers, my family, and everyone at ASU Prep Digital who has supported and encouraged me along the way. I am very grateful for this recognition and for the opportunity to speak today. ASU Prep Digital has been a unique and important part of my high school journey. As an online school, it has given me the flexibility to set my own schedule, which has helped me develop a strong time management skills while balancing many extracurricular commitments. A common stereotype about online school is that it can be difficult to socialize. However, ASU Prep Digital offers many clubs and opportunities to connect with other students. As president of my school's book club, I have come to truly value the community and friendships I have built over the past 3 years. I'm also incredibly grateful for the support and encouragement I have received from my teachers and staff. I would especially like to thank my calculus honors teacher, Mr. Livingston, for his constant enthusiasm and support throughout my academic journey. Due to his encouragement, I have been able to explore many valuable opportunities, including being here today. This award does not celebrate my achievements alone. It reflects the support of my family, friends, and teachers who have helped shape who I am today. I am constantly inspired by the world around me and by the people who encourage me to keep learning and growing. Through volunteering at the Yuma Community Food Bank, I collaborated with local elementary schools to organize food drives, helping raise over 3,300 pounds of food and more than $200 in monetary donations, providing thousands of meals for those in need. I also tutor students in math and English at a Mary Schools Academy North, and I would like to thank the school's principal, Miss Linda McCormick, for giving me the opportunity to help the students there. These experiences have taught me resilience and the importance of serving and uplifting my community. In the future, I hope to pursue a career in STEM and attend a university here in Arizona. While I'm still exploring my exact path, I know that this recognition is a meaningful step in my academic journey. I am deeply grateful to the Arizona State Board of Education, as well as to my family and friends for their never-ending support. I would not be where I am today without you. Thank you.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes the executive director's report for today.
Wonderful. Thank you guys all so much for being here today. We will now move on to item 2, the call of the public. This is a time for the public to comment on, as I turn the page, items listed on the consent agenda or the general session. Members of the public may also address topics not on today's agenda. Please note that Arizona law prohibits the board from discussing or taking legal actions on matters raised during a call to the public that are not on the current meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during the 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker, and personal attacks are not appropriate. Deputy Director Duplanty, have we received any requests to speak?
Vice President Horn, or Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we have. First up will be Beth Hatcher, followed by Jacob Barber, followed by Melissa Kemp. Beth? All right, not seeing Beth in the room. Jacob? Not seeing Jacob. How about Melissa Kemp online? Go ahead. You need to unmute if you can. There you go.
Okay, can you see me and hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Haven't done this before, and I didn't know how your webinars worked, so thank you for giving me a little minute here to get caught up. My name's Melissa Kemp. I am a CFP professional. I'm here today because in my role as a CFP, I don't work with clients, I work with our professional association. So I represent the Financial Planning Association Arizona. We are the professional home for financial planners. That includes CFPs, but also other designations can become financial planners, CPAs with a personal financial specialist designation, for example, or CHFCs. We are working hard to become the essential hub of our financial planning community, and our primary goal with being here today is to introduce ourselves to you around our efforts on financial literacy. We have been working with various nonprofits in the state of Arizona to deliver financial literacy, credible quality financial literacy courses to their constituents. We learned recently about the Department of Education's seal for personal finance that can be added to a high school diploma for students, teachers, classes, districts that want it. So we'd like to help make that more common, easier to get to, easier access. We want to do whatever we can to extend information about that seal to high schools across the state. We are working closely with ASU. They have an online course called Fin 294. It's a course in personal financial literacy, highly accessible online, asynchronous learning with assessments. Schools can offer this as little as $25 per student. There are nonprofits we're starting to work with. Neon is one where they will come in and try and finance or fund schools that may want this, where the students or the school doesn't have that kind of funding. If students want to take this course, we can pair them with a CFP professional to be in the room so that there's sort of a club element with an advisor, and a teacher doesn't need to become proficient in personal finance in order to facilitate that opportunity on their campus. So we're hearing that the Board of Education, oh, my time's up. Anyway, we want to know what your interest is, how we can help, what we can do to move this forward, and especially to get that course from ASU listed and approved for being an option for getting this personal.
Thank you very much.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Jeanette Aldina Perry, followed by Sarah Torres, followed by Heidi Will. Jeanette?
Good morning. My name is Jeanette Aldana Perry, and I'm from Casa Grande, District 16. I want to begin by thanking Superintendent Horn for addressing the stark differences between what the Arizona Department of Education is reporting and what 12 News and various other media outlets have reported regarding ESA spending. These conversations matter because public perception shapes policy, and policy impacts ESA families like mine. It is important that we are working from accurate, complete information, not narratives that may represent how ESA families are actually using ESA funds. I also want to take a moment to recognize President Haley. Congratulations on continuing to serve on this board, especially in light of what we've learned about efforts by certain Save Our Schools lobbyists to have you removed by Governor Hobbs last year. Thank you for standing firm last year and for being the only member of the State Board of Education to vote against the ESA handbook. I sincerely hope you will stand in that same conviction again today. If you are successful in your run for Arizona State Treasurer, President Haley, I hope you will carry with you the voices, concerns, and lived experiences of ESA families that you've heard during your time on this board. The mission of the Arizona State Board of Education is to develop successful citizens through robust public education. And while that mission is centered on public education, this board also plays a meaningful role in shaping school choice policy, including decisions like today's ESA handbook. As President Haley mentioned, there's nearly 103,000 ESA students. I want to emphasize that this does not have to be framed as public school proud versus school choice proud. Arizona families deserve both. We can support strong public schools while also protecting the rights of families to choose the educational path that best meets their children's needs. I respectfully ask this board to please decline to sign or support any proposed ESA ballot initiative that would limit or undermine the choices that so many Arizona families rely on. These decisions are not abstract. They impact real children, real families, and real futures. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Sarah Torres, followed by Heidi Will, followed by Diane Ryan. Sarah?
Good morning, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, and members of the board. My name is Sarah Torres, Executive Director of the Arizona Science Teachers Association, which representing more than 1,200 science educators across Arizona. Thank you for your work on the statewide assessment system. I'm here to speak specifically about the K-8 science assessment. Arizona's science standards are built as learning progressions across grade bands, centered on core ideas that develop over time. That's why the current assessment measures grades 3 through 5 in grade 5 and grades 6 through 8 in 8th grade. It aligns to how students actually learn science. ASTA respectfully asked the board to do one of two things: maintain the grade band assessment with cluster level reporting, or move to annual science testing in grades 3 through 8 so all core ideas are measured. If we only assess grade 5 and grade 8 standards, we leave gaps. In middle school, that means measuring only about half of the science clusters and missing critical concepts students need to be prepared for high school and beyond. In math and ELA, educators receive cluster level data to guide instruction. Science educators need that same level of meaningful information. Because here's the reality: what we assess drives what gets taught. If a science assessment is incomplete, science instruction becomes incomplete. And that directly impacts whether our students are prepared for Arizona's growing STEM economy in bioscience, engineering, and advanced manufacturing. If we want strong if we want strong STEM outcomes, we must measure the full system, not just part of it. Thank you for your time and your leadership.
Thank you so much.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Heidi Will, followed by Diane Ryan, followed by Rebecca Beebe. Heidi?
Hi, can you guys see me?
Yep,
I
we
don't
can
see
see you.
myself.
We can see you and hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, Board President Haley, members of the board, Superintendent Horn. I am the mother of 4 children in the ESA program. ADE's recent audit showed that only 2% of ESA purchases were unallowable and only 0.3% involve fraud. That completely blows apart the media narrative that the ESA program is rife with fraud. The vast majority of ESA families are trying in good faith to follow the rules, and we support ADE rooting out real fraud. But I am concerned about ADE enforcement actions on today's agenda that are not grounded in the law. Since ADE has chosen not to update the ESA Parent Handbook this year, no doubt to the relief of many, it is even more important that the enforcement actions be limited to what the law actually says and to policies that have been clearly communicated to parents. For example, in consent agenda item B, ADE denied a reimbursement not because the item was unallowable, but because significant purchases in non-core subject areas left less than 1/3 of the student's funding for core subjects. But ARS section 15-2402, subsection B, paragraph 1 only says that parents must use a portion of ESA funds for core subjects. It does not include the word significant or specify an amount or percentage. I respectfully ask you to require ADE to identify the specific statute, administrative code, or handbook page that was violated in each case. And please don't uphold decisions where none of the above were actually violated. I support enforcement against real fraud and real violations, but parents should not be penalized based on vague or unwritten rules that go beyond the law. Please look closely at each enforcement action and ask, what was the rule, where was it written, and how was it communicated? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Diane Ryan, followed by Rebecca Beebe. Diane? Yep, there you go.
Okay. All right. Good morning. I'm here to add a little bit about what Sarah Torres addressed as far as the science assessments. I'm the regional director for Yavapai County. And last week, we've been talking about this in ASTA for the last 2 or 3 months about the assessments and what's coming up. And Sarah asked me to kind of take an informal poll of what teachers thought. So I did that last week. And again, this was very informal. It wasn't a formal poll, but it was overwhelming that the teachers wanted science testing at every level from 3 through 8. So they thought it was important enough to dedicate the time to it and to make sure that we were getting all the standards covered in each grade level. So again, the teachers, and it kind of surprised me a bit, but they overwhelmingly in my area, and the just so you know, the population that I was surveying, there were 2 large districts and then one very, very small district. And again, all of the teachers felt like they wanted assessments at every level 3 through 8. So they felt that was the fairest way and the best way to assess what's happening as far as science. So thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Next up is Rebecca Beebe.
President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, my name is Rebecca Beebe, and I'm here on behalf of the Arizona School Administrators. We are a professional association that provides support services to school administrators statewide in every county and every corner of the state, including district superintendents, elementary principals, middle school principals, high school principals, other education services administrators, and as well as our higher ed division comprised of university faculty that teach in Arizona's education leadership master's and doctorate programs. I'm here today because we support the Technical Advisory Committee's recommendation in front of you today in item 4D regarding the growth indicator and the proficiency indicator. In addition to expressing our support for the ATAC's recommendations, I wanted to, here on behalf of ASA, express our sincere gratitude to the board members, to the ATAC members, to the SBE staff, and especially to the ADE staff for putting countless hours and endless hard work towards our state's accountability system. And with these ATAC meetings, we know it's been a lot of work. Superintendents support the concept of indicators and indicator scorings in the A through F accountability system because it provides more context to parents and the public on a school's performance. It's difficult to assign one single summative letter grade to a school summarizing their academic performance. Parents may be looking for different things, as we know. A parent with a student who's already highly proficient in subject areas may not be so worried about the proficiency scores, but may be looking for a school with more robust CTE offerings. Or, for example, a student with low proficiency scores or who is having trouble reading and going into the 3rd grade, they may have parents who are looking for a district with high growth points because they'll feel more comfortable with the school that has a track record of improving student outcomes. We know this work hasn't been easy and that it's very highly technical and sometimes politicized, so we're very grateful for the steady work of this board and for this opportunity to encourage this board to adopt the recommendations in front of you as we all continue towards implementing indicator scoring. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes this call to the public.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. We will now move on to item 3, the consent agenda. Is there an item or items from the consent agenda that a board member would like to pull and discuss? Member Konvikas.
Thank you, sir. I'd love to pull 3D, 3F, and 3G.
D, 3F, 3G. Anyone else? All right. Executive Director Ross will listen to me as I do this to make sure I pull the right ones off as we do this. Do I have a motion to approve 3A, 3B, C, E, and H?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. All right. So, Member Konvikas, we want to start with 3D.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. Last year, we amended 15501 to require that all mild, moderate teacher prep programs have to require the courses that are necessary to obtain a literacy endorsement. And I wanted to make sure that this has been integrated into this process now. And moving forward, if we can see evidence of the coursework for the literacy endorsement on these approvals.
Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Konvikas. With us today is Jamie Wilbur from the Department of Education, who oversees, among other things, Ed Prep program review.
Good morning. Good morning. Yes, so just Just want to share with you that all of the applications undergo a two-stage review process, and the initial review is conducted by the EPP team, our EPP specialists. And what they do in that initial administrative review is they look for all of the required coursework for the intended certification pieces. So the SEI coursework, if applicable, as well as looking for the literacy coursework, literacy endorsement coursework. So if that's something that we need to add to the score sheet, we can absolutely do that for you.
Great, thank you. So this has been, I know it's only been about 6 months. This is integrated in the
Yes.
process now for mild, moderate.
Yes, Member
Great.
Kurvik.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Noting it would be helpful.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks.
Does that address 3F too? Or is that a different one?
No, yes, actually, it's the same. It's just as you know, as a board, we're trying so hard to focus on literacy. So I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. So if we could note on all of the teacher prep programs that there has been a review of all the courses that are required for the literacy endorsement, I think
Yes.
that would be helpful.
Okay, so moving forward, Vice President Hagerman and Member Kurvikis, as well as President Haley. Sorry, you're not here in person, so I apologize.
Yes, it's okay.
That on the score sheet that we submit to you, you would like to see just something that states that we have done that in that administrative review process.
Yes, and to clarify, so are you actually reviewing like the syllabi, or how does that look? I know there's a lot in the
Yeah.
reviews. I've seen the binders. I know there's a lot.
Yeah, so our EPP specialists go through what we call an administrative review process. So what they do is they go through and they confirm that that coursework is included within there. And so specifically when you're talking about this one, what we look for is we make sure that the coursework meets the criteria for the endorsement. So for example, for the University of Phoenix one, we're looking for the science of reading and the reading intervention ones. I actually have listed out here what the courses are specifically that meet that endorsement. So we wouldn't necessarily put those on there, but we could tag for you, yes, that those coursework that is included in the full course review that our EPP specialists have gone through, and they do meet the endorsement requirements. Would that suffice?
I appreciate that. Are they actually looking at the syllabi or the courses at all? As you know, it's just as a state, we've been kind of putting all of our eggs in the
Absolutely.
literacy endorsement basket.
So further than once we go through that, then it goes out to the actual independent reviewers and they dig a little bit deeper into everything. So yes, everything goes through and is vetted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Before we go to the next one, Member Haley, President Haley, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just would like to associate myself with Member Kurvik's comments because this has been an ongoing conversation that I've had with Executive Director Ross and members about that. It's really important that we have some visibility into that K through 5 literacy endorsement, and if our educator prep programs are actually following through with the rules, the statute and rules that we have set for them. So I would associate myself with Member Kurvikis's concern and would like to be able to see that in our when we receive the items on the consent agenda around our educator prep programs. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Haley. Anything else that you all are wanting to see with the process, we're happy to share that with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to do 3G now?
Along the lines of really focusing in on literacy, this is a kind of almost standing item on our consent agendas. And as you know, I've been continuing to pull them off and ask more questions. The statute says that if more than 20% of students at grade 3 at either the individual school or district level do not demonstrate proficiency, the governing board has to conduct a review of its reading program that includes curriculum and professional development in light of current evidence-based reading research. So I'm just curious to know if that is happening and if they have to demonstrate this review in their literacy plans.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. We do have with us today Tiana Sanchez, who is the Director of English Language Arts at the Arizona Department of Education. Tiana?
Good morning, President Haley,
Member Kervikas, members of the board. The literacy plan does not require for schools, for LEAs to provide that information to us, but it is part of that legislation. You are correct.
Can we make it part of the plan? So as I've asked staff as well for copies of plans, I want to actually see them. And I understand your position, but I also read the statute as saying, the monies.
Oh,
is-
sorry.
about that. The monies are received only after the support plan of the district or charter school has been submitted, reviewed, and recommended for approval by ADE. And then the state board must give approval. So I feel really strongly about the fiduciary, authority that the legislature has given us. This was like $55 million last year, and test scores are going down. So I'm going to continue to ask some really tough questions. Is there a way that we can ensure that this is happening? I mean, it's concerning enough that we still have curriculums that are over 10 years old that haven't been there. And I'm growing more and more uncomfortable supporting this. And not because I want schools to get the money, but I also want kids to be reading. And I want to make sure, every time I go back and review the statutes, I say, wow, we have really good, we actually have really good policy on the books. So there's got to be something in the implementation. Is there a way we can incorporate that review into the literacy plans, or would it require, I don't know, a rule change or something? Because it seems like a really critical component.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that concern up. President Haley, Member Kervikas, members of the board. We just rolled out a brand new Mauer portal, which houses our literacy plan this year. And so what we've been doing is we've been taking feedback, such as what you are providing to us, and we've been working with our IT developers to include certain things for next school year. So that is definitely something that I can bring up at our next meeting that we have with our developers, and ask them if there's a way for us to include a question in our literacy plan that asks specifically if there has been a review by their school board, if there are any LEAs that meet that criteria under that legislation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It'd be great if they could note the date of the governing board meeting where that was discussed as well.
Okay, we will do that. We will consider that. We'll just have to take a look at what the developers can provide for us between now and the start of the next school year. Absolutely. I'll bring that up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
President Haley?
Yes, thanks so much for paying attention to us on the online. Just on the, I've noticed that as we receive the Mauer plans, we now have indication on whether or not the science of reading is included in the curriculum, and I appreciate that. So being able to get that additional clarification would be fantastic on what can be included in the plans. I just think it will help us as a board be able to support districts moving in the right direction and make sure that they're adopting science of reading and equipping their staff and also their students in their reading endeavors. So just wanted to say I appreciated the department's steps, and again, thank you for raising the questions, Member Kervikas.
I'm sorry, I have one follow-up question.
Okay.
To Member Haley's point, it is very helpful to see that. I do understand that there was a change made on the approved curriculums this year. So if it could be noted, and I'm sorry to continue to ask for more work, but I think you agree this is so important. It'd be helpful to know, like, if their last curriculum adoption was 2012, I'm making that up, if that curriculum was on the list of things that are not now allowable. Because that'll help me show more grace.
Yes.
Thank you.
President Haley, Member Kervikas, members of the board, absolutely. That is something that we continue as reviewers to keep in mind as well. So we keep notes from year to year, and we provide grace period as well for schools who are in that predicament. However, as we've noted in our previous, or Linda Burrows has noted in our previous presentations, we are in constant communication with our LEAs and with vendors. So we strive to do our very best to make sure that that communication is continuous.
And I appreciate that. And Linda's always been so generous with her time with us as well. And I know you guys don't have the statutory authority to force them to, But I feel like we've been given the statutory authority to be the final review on these plans, and some of these curriculums are over 10 years old and not evidence-based. But if they were on a list that no longer exists, I would probably, agree that there'd be a grace period. So if that could be noted, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
We will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve 3D, 3F, and 3G?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Right. Any opposed? Yes, go ahead, Member Kavickas.
Thank you. Thank you. I vote aye on all three, but I'm growing more and more uncomfortable approving these plans because I feel like the legislature asked us to provide that final approval, and we're approving plans that are still not in alliance with the statute. So I just want to say that again. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We now move on to the general session, starting with 4A, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. I'm actually going to have our Constituent Services Director, Shannon Etz, introduce this item as she oversees the work of our Student Advisory Panel. Shannon?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, and Superintendent Horn and board members, thank you guys so much. Like Sean mentioned, I get to work with our student advisory panel kiddos. It is the highlight of my job, and I brag about it to all the other staff members because it's cooler than what they get to do. This year we have 11 awesome students serving on our student advisory panel. They range from 10th grade all the way up to seniors in high school. They have done more at this point in high school than I'll probably do in my whole life. So it's really a joy to get to work with them. As part of serving on the student advisory panel, we try to introduce them to interesting guest speakers. We've had some board members come and present to them. We've had other folks at the department present, and really just round out their knowledge of state education and who's making decisions and where do they come from and what are the experiences like. I also meet with them and bring any questions you guys have that you want student feedback. I bring to this group and they bring input. The past years, they've reviewed the strategic plan and a couple other items and provided student feedback on the issues you guys are considering. But they also get time as a group to discuss and to talk about what's challenging them, what are they concerned about in Arizona education, what do they wish there was more of or less of. So that's what they're here to present on today. One of the topics they've identified is civics and financial literacy. It's something that this group is very passionate about. They want to see more of. So they've kind of evaluated, they've looked at research from other states, and they have some recommendations they wanted to share with you guys. So I will have them come on up. We have Emilio Sains, Shreya Raman, and Miriel Ko that are here to co-present for you guys.
Fantastic.
Hi, my name is Shreya Raman. I'm a junior at Basis Awatuki High School here in Phoenix.
My name is Emilio Sains. I'm 16 years old. I'm a sophomore at Phoenix Country Day School and the vice chair of the student panel.
My name is Mariella Ko, and I'm a senior at Arizona School for the Arts.
This is our presentation about civics and financial literacy initiatives across the state of Arizona.
Let's start with the panel's role. The Arizona State Board of Education Student Advisory Panel works to represent the perspectives of students across Arizona, share how education policies impact students, and identify gaps between what schools teach and what students actually need. Today's discussion focuses on specifically civics education and financial literacy from the student's perspective.
So throughout the panel, we have decided to note our individual experiences with civics in our schools. The members of the student panel are from charter schools, private schools, and public schools. For me specifically, I attend Basis, which is a charter school. Though Basis tends to undercut the humanities subjects often, they do a satisfactory job at ensuring every student has a baseline knowledge of government. Every high school student is required to take AP Government and AP US History, which gives us a comprehensive understanding of basic constitutional principles. However, it's really important to note that there is a big difference between government and civics, and they are not largely the same thing. And the lack of practical knowledge in civics, such as voting, understanding credible news sources, and democratic participation, is a major reason why students have a general lack of interest in the topic altogether.
Similar to Shreya, I've never received a direct civic literacy lesson or any civic literacy education at my school outside of regular history and government classes.
Similar to both Emilio and Shreya, I've also haven't experienced any formal civics education training. It was mainly just like the test required to graduate. And summing up everyone else's perspectives, they've all kind of said the same thing. But we've also had ranges of people that have that foundation of civics education. So as you can see, it kind of varies throughout different schools.
So some problems we as a panel have agreed on is that first, civics classes often focus on memorizing facts and historical governmental facts instead of how these government decisions actually affect our daily lives in current issues. Second, many students feel disconnected from civic education because lessons rarely involve discussion, debate, or more pressing topics like real community issues. Third, students are not consistently taught how to evaluate political information or navigate misinformation online. This was a really big one for us, as most of us get a lot of our news from places like social media or polarized media outlets, and so media literacy is more important now than ever. Fifth, opportunities to actively participate in civic life, such as engaging with local leaders, doing something like this, or addressing community issues are limited, and we wish our schools would promote those more to us. Finally, we found that access to strong civic education varies widely depending on the school or the teacher. Why we think civic education matters is that first, it builds informed citizens. Students learn how government decisions affect their communities and how to engage thoughtfully with political issues. Second, it strengthens critical thinking. Civic education teaches students how to evaluate news, analyze political information, and more important than ever now, recognize misinformation. Third, it encourages participation in democracy. When students understand civic processes, they're more likely to vote, engage in their community, and advocate for the issues they care about.
Much like how we did with civic education, we also took into consideration our individual experiences surrounding financial literacy. So for me specifically, while my school does make us take economics in the 8th grade as our high school credit, further exploration into FinLit and economics is optional within the 9th through 12th grade. While we do offer AP Economics, Macro, and Micro as elective classes, a large majority of the high school population goes through their 4 years without any knowledge of economics or practical applications of finance.
So for me personally, I've only had an economics class, a financial literacy class, in my like senior year, whereas Shreya had it in her 8th grade. So I haven't really been exposed to any classes related to financial literacy until my senior year of high school, where an economics class was assigned to me as a requirement to graduate. However, that class taught a lot of like terms and not really many real world application skills. So that's what I feel like a lot of students lack in financial literacy.
To kind of sum up the major themes from everyone's perspectives, we found that oftentimes we get economics education, but something that we would appreciate is learning like how to use a credit card or taxes or more real world applicable things relating to finances. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide.
Okay, so for problems we've experienced, so lack of access is the first one. So only 31% of students have access to financial courses, while over 68% want them. And another big thing is the focus on curriculum. So many times students teach terms, schools teach terms or abbreviate the content taught. So that's like creating like flashcards, things like that, just creating like terms and definitions. Whereas in the real world, we need more application-based teachings. And then so timing is also a big thing to go along with that, because a lot of the times, like for example, like Shreya was taught in the 8th grade, whereas I was taught in the 12th grade. So it's a lot about like the timing of when is the right time to introduce these topics to the students. Another big thing is a lack of trained educators, because right now currently we have like the teacher shortage and all that stuff. So it's just kind of hard to find teachers that are designated to be able to like teach these topics that are also qualified in that realm. Lastly, overcrowded curricula, because we know like a lot of schools have their core curriculums with like your average classes like math, English, science, history, and maybe foreign language. And so a lot of the times it's hard to figure out when to like place financial literacy into all of that and integrate it. So why this matters? So students with 3 years of high school financial education were 40% less likely to fall behind on credit card payments. So that's really that's a good statistic to point out how like financial literacy can really impact a student's like well-being in the future. So life planning to go along with that, things such as like student loans, credit cards, investments, current salaries, budgeting, things like that. It becomes really helpful for students to be able to like know and have knowledge of like their finances and being able to like budget their money and things like that, and building habits. So a lot of students have no idea what to do once they start making money. So financially literate individuals are 72% more likely to save money and 50% more likely to compare prices.
Through analyzing all of our different perspectives and experiences surrounding civic education and financial literacy, we did find some common themes within all of our experiences we found important to note. So first, students want more hands-on learning. Across schools, it's clear that civics and financial literacy instruction often focuses more on memorization and pure academics rather than real-world applications. This leads many students to be unprepared to vote, understand financial decisions, or engage within public and civil liberties. So the experimental programs that we discussed show strong outcomes. Evidence from initiatives such as Project Citizen, We the People, iCivics, and NextGen Personal Finance demonstrates that project-based learning, debates, simulations, and role plays have a major impact in improving civic knowledge, student engagement, and financial knowledge and confidence. It's also extremely clear that access to high-quality instruction is inconsistent. Civics and financial literacy educational opportunities vary greatly across school types and districts, such as Emilio, and Mariella, especially between public, private, and charter schools. This means that many students graduate with varying preparation and understanding of civic participation and liberties and financial responsibility. Therefore, educator training and structured courses have a positive impact on student readiness. It is clear that well-trained educators and specifically dedicated courses in civics and finance leads to a stronger understanding and leads to greater long-term civic and financial educational outcomes. Therefore, we recommend to incorporate practical, real-world skills into government and civics courses that are already offered in Arizona schools. Courses could focus on how to pragmatically engage in democracy and understand how to navigate the ever-changing political landscape in the local and national governments. Practical skills include voting, media literacy, meaningful discourse, and learning how to make change through using proper democratic systems. Similarly to that with financial literacy, we recommend to incorporate practical financial literacy education in high schools within the already established economics education. This education should be focused on real-life skills like budgeting, credit, taxes, loans, and investing. This would aid students in managing money and making informed financial decisions after graduation.
For our civics recommendations, we came up with 4 main recommendations. First is to prioritize structured discussion and debate between students in civics classes to help them engage with civics and current events in a practical and engaging way. Second is to strengthen media literacy lessons. This one's actually personal to me because I was lucky to have a history teacher last year that showed us all the different biases in media. She even had a chart where you could see which ones are most left-leaning, which ones are most right-leaning. And for me, this was really eye-opening to see you can't really trust anything you read on your phone. And so I think every school should teach media literacy, especially today. Third is implement lessons on voting and keeping track of local and national elections. Fourth is to teach students how to properly advocate and serve their communities. Things like the Student Board of Education Advisory Panel are really meaningful opportunities for us, I know, and I wish schools would do a better job of promoting opportunities like these to students like us.
So for our Finlit recommendations, we have 3 that we've decided to include today. So the first one is incorporating lessons that teach students about like practical adult skills, such as filing taxes, credit, and loans. The second one is providing opportunities within existing economics curriculum for students to practice real-world financial decision-making and budgeting activities and simulations that reflect reality. And the third one is to incorporate lessons teaching students about spending habits and financial priorities, such as budgeting, investing, and the stock market, so that they develop responsible money management practices.
To conclude, Arizona students need access to hands-on learning experiences in civics and financial literacy, including practical skills like registering to vote, participating in debate, and visiting a bank and opening a bank account. Arizona's educators need access to programs and curriculums with high rates of success, as well as access to high-quality professional development. We urge you to consider changes to Arizona graduation requirements that includes a requirement for financial literacy in addition to the 12th grade economics course, or balance the curriculum requirements for econ to focus more on individual financial independence. We propose the same solution for civics to incorporate those changes into existing government classes as well. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Thank you guys so much. Awesome. Oh. Does anyone have any Superintendent Horn first? Don't sneak away quite yet.
Yes. So we in the department give guidance to schools in the implementation of the standards that they're required to teach. So this has been very interesting to me. We will take the written version of it. We'll have a number of people in our staff review it. And I think we should take action on some of the things you've raised. We require half a year of government and half a year of economics, or you cannot graduate. As somebody pointed out, one of you pointed out, we don't leave enough room for the things that are not required that students want to take because of interest. I think you mentioned foreign languages and some other things. And it includes music and sports and so on. And so I've taken the position that we don't want to add any more required courses because students do need electives. And I think we've gone a little bit far in squeezing out electives with too many requirements. Now, let me say that I take a particular interest in the economics course because that was my proposal during my first term in 2003 to the state board to require a half year of economics, and the board passed it. So I think I've expected them to be teaching financial literacy, and if they're not doing it, we need to get on them about it because economics courses should teach financial literacy. I think that's very important. So there was somebody pushing a separate required course of financial literacy at one time. I was against it for the reasons I've just said. The legislature was not interested. And Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they started to bring it to the board and they withdrew it because they sensed it wouldn't pass here. Is my memory correct?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, there was a bill 2 years ago, I believe it was Senator Mesnard, pushing for a requirement, half credit financial literacy requirement. And then we've had a presentation from current State Treasurer Yee a couple of years ago about states that have added a personal finance requirement to graduation as well. So it's arisen to the level of the board a couple of times in the last few years.
But I think they wanted to have the board support that bill and sensed that the board would not, and they withdrew that request, if I remember correctly.
There was no official vote at that time. So
Right. And now the same thing applies in government. Government should be teaching civics. I have science on the mind. Government should be teaching civics. And so we'll look again at our guidances in that respect. And I agree with you that students very badly need to learn about all the false information on the internet and about and controversial, we've had a lot of discussion in the political world about controversial subjects in our schools. And my position has been we should teach controversial subjects, but we need to be sure that teachers present both sides and don't use that as an opportunity to propagandize their own point of view. But given that they teach both sides, I think controversial subjects properly belong in a history or a government class. So I've taken very seriously what you said. We're going to take the written version and work it over. And I suspect we'll be taking action on some things.
Anyone else? Dr. Clay.
Good morning, everyone. What an amazing presentation you've given. This is what these are going to be my action items I would like a copy of that clip so that I can send it to or share it with my student advisory council at the county level. I'd also like to share that with our county superintendents. I would like to put that on my website. I'd like to share it with the community. I'd like to share it with board members, district superintendents, county superintendents. Why? Because school starts at the local area. It is a locally controlled organization. And yes, we need to start somewhere at the legislative portion. That's top down, but let's go ahead and do bottom up. All right. The bottom up approach or strategy is going to be, we're going to share this amazing presentation to as many people as we can. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that your voice matters. And we need to listen to the voice of those we service, and it is our students. So you have basically, stirred up something new in my heart. I'm going to be meeting with my council this evening at 7 o'clock. I'm going to show them this. I believe you have started a movement. All right. I thank you for your recommendation. I love when you said you can't trust everything you read on your phone, and that's one of the reasons why we need to know civics. I appreciate that you're saying that you need access to hands-on experience with civics and financial literacy. I appreciate that you are advocating for yourself with the passion that is definitely needed in our future leaders. You're amazing. We are with you, and you have started something amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. President Haley.
Thank you all so much for your presentation. Super. I'm really grateful that you took the time to assess civics and financial literacy. I imagine you investigated a couple things. One, our Arizona Chamber of Commerce helps lead and participates in a national civics bee for students in grades 6 through 8. And while not in high school, it is something that's pretty exciting. And so perhaps you can share with your younger classmates and your schools that is a tremendous opportunity from a practical application perspective. And then also, I'm curious to ask you all, when looking at civics education, part of the graduation requirements is that our students going into effect, I believe this school year, they have to pass the citizenship exam with a 70% graduate or 70% pass rate. Were you all able to take a look at that at all and how that has impacted students and they're deepening their understanding of civics?
I personally have taken the citizenship exam to graduate high school, and I know that Mariella has as well. The major issues I see alongside that is most of the questions on that exam are either basic US history or who our current state and national leaders are. So it's like, who's the president, who's the vice president, or when was this war, or who won this war. At least I took it in freshman year, so this was a couple of years ago. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But that's the main line of reasoning we have in our presentation, is that there's a big difference between memorizing these facts and memorizing facts about government versus understanding practical applications in civics, because the test doesn't necessarily attest to our knowledge on how to vote or understanding media or any of those things, which is why we did take a look at it, and we do have experiences in taking this exam. However, it is more consistent with the current government courses and not so much consistent with civic education.
That's fair. Interesting. There is just something else to share with your educators and your teachers that might be interesting. The Goldwater Institute, which is a think tank here in Arizona, they announced earlier this year Excellence in Civics Education School District Grant Program. So for any public, charter, or even private high school that wants to deepen civics education, they can apply for grants through the Goldwater Institute. to receive additional resources and textbooks around civics, and that grant is available until June. But I really appreciated this insight. One thing on financial literacy, I think Superintendent Horn identified it. In 2019, the legislature passed and the governor signed a financial literacy policy to help particularly K through 12 students, but also citizens more broadly on educate individuals on financial literacy. We do have our financial literacy seal of personal finance. While it's not, it's sort of incorporated within our history, as Superintendent Horn alluded. I'm curious, were you guys in your survey and understanding of students and their experience with financial literacy, did you find any of your peers participate in the seal of personal finance, and what their experience was when they took that exam, and sort of in some ways took self-directed learning to pursue that seal?
I think it's very dependent on whether your school offers that opportunity to its students, or if the students are informed of it through third-party sources and then goes themselves to ask for it. My school particularly does not know about things like the financial literacy seal or the civic seal, so I've had to go advocate for myself and talk to my school administrators about that. But I know a lot of public schools within Arizona, that opportunity is widely available, and it's up to the students to get the required credits in order to obtain that seal.
Member Kavickas.
Thank you. It was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to hear that Superintendent Horn is going to figure out ways to embed it. Because what came to my mind is I know that the department has cyclical standards reviews of all the different, English, math, and that student voice, I don't know if it's already there, would be so helpful, because the common theme I hear from students all the time is the applicability versus the memorization. So that voice, I think, in standards reviews would be super helpful. And even when we're designing new assessments and things like that, I think that perspective is helpful. Thank you so much. You guys did a great job.
Member Haney.
I would like to echo what has been stated already in terms of thanking you for the presentation and for the work that you've put into as a student advisory panel to bring this very important issue to the attention of certainly the board, but also to others. Echoing what Dr. Clay has said as well, I think maybe you have started a bit of a movement. Also, what Superintendent Horn has said in terms of, so this is my question. I've got a question for you if you'd like to care to answer it. In terms of whether we require civics, and I think we're kind of splitting that into civics education and media literacy, or civics literacy and media literacy as well, because I think both of them are two sides of maybe the same coin, and as well as financial literacy, which personal financial literacy, which is very important, especially once you graduate and get out into on your own. So the question about whether or not it should be required at the high school level, or if it should be an elective. I do know that for some students, and maybe even some older adults, that when something is required, they tend to listen less. But if it's something that they've chosen to do, it's an elective and they elect to do it, maybe they're more interested in it and they learn more about it. Is there a way that we can kind of split this a little bit so that it is something that's still an elective, but something that we can promote in a way? So my question for you is, if it were just simply another requirement, do you zone out and not pay attention to it? Or is there a better way to approach it so that it's still there as an option, but something that students are more interested in?
Before that's answered, could I just make one clarification? The position of the department is it should be required, but as part of the government course and the economics course.
Embedded within the government
Embedded within those courses, rather than adding another requirement, which will squeeze out electives even more than we've already done.
Okay. Well, my question still stands, though, for you is, can we expand on it outside of that required government course, so that it's something that you can really discuss at length, maybe across the course of a semester, just on those topics? What would your perspective be from the perspective of a student?
Well, to start, I absolutely agree. I think the most efficient way of embedding this right now is mixing it into already existing government and economics courses, because I think right now it's kind of too fact-based and not enough real-world-based, and things like media literacy can fit in a history class or a government course. But as far as requirements and electives, I absolutely think expanding the electives available. I know at my school, Phoenix Country Day, we have a finance elective, and it's one of the most popular electives because students, like, we do want to learn about how to manage finances, and it's something that a lot of us know nothing about. So I absolutely think there's a lot of interest in the elective, and it doesn't necessarily need to be required as long as it's in some form or another embedded into existing courses.
I also agree with Emilio's point. I do think the most effective way to embed civics education and financial literacy within schools is within currently existing econ and government classes. And I do think that if we were to expand the amount of electives available, it should be on top of that already existing civics and financial literacy incorporation. Because while I do think it's imperative for schools to have options for expanded civics and financial literacy classes, I don't think it should only be electives. I think we should also incorporate them and embed them into already existing econ and government classes, especially when, for example, with civics and civic literacy, I go to a STEM school, so most of the people there, minus myself, are typically really interested in things like biology or chemistry and physics. So they tend to pick those kind of electives over something like civic literacy or financial literacy. And on top of that, that's also true in public schools. I don't think a lot of students will choose to take an extra academic elective course over an arts course or something that they're personally interested in, which is why I think that while it's very important to expand elective options within these schools, it should be on top of already embedding them into existing econ and government courses.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Horn, for that clarification as well. So if we can embed some of those things as almost a primer for those that want to learn more or go further into an elective course, that would give them more information.
Yeah, that embedding would be very high priority for me.
Okay, thank you.
Member Catanese.
Thank you. First off, this is incredible. You guys are literally representing so many students across the state with things that I think that they wish that we knew. And I'm just very, very proud of all of you for bringing this to our attention. You know, a well-informed electorate is a prerequisite for democracy, and you all are showcasing that as, you know, young people. And I think what's really important is that students across the state realize that you don't have to be a certain age to make a difference. You are making a difference right now, and that's very, very evident in everything that you're telling us today. You have Superintendent Horn, who is going to be looking at these standards because of stuff that you said, and I think that is something that you should be very, very proud of. And I think that it is something that I'm grateful for you for taking a look at that, especially because as Member Kravickas pointed out, some of our curriculum is drastically outdated, and so if we look at where we are today versus 10 years ago, a large portion of students in the state are getting their information from what? Social media, right? And so that is something that has drastically changed, and allowing a student to be well informed and actually know and vet what they're watching or vet what they're reading is going to be very important, because they have to make decisions for themselves. And so I'm also curious to see if you would be up for creating a survey that potentially could be distributed to students across the state, and I'll help you get it in front of different schools, and I know a lot of my colleagues will help as well. But I think it'd be really important to survey students and actually understand what exactly it is that they're missing from their curriculum and what exactly it is that they're needing. Especially with financial literacy. I think that it is really important to have financial literacy, personal financial literacy in the high school, because not every single student is going to pursue college. And so being able to have that embedded within a curriculum would honestly help a lot of students, especially students that come from low-income backgrounds. Personal financial literacy could be the game changer for them to get out of poverty. So I want to commend you. I want to applaud you. I'm very proud of you. You guys are amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate everything you've done. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I just want to emphasize that overarching that we hear from students all the time is the applicability. So it's really moving towards a more competency-based system rather than just fact-based, because as my kids remind me all the time, they can just Google it. So they don't have to necessarily memorize all, yeah. Thank you so much.
I 100% concur with that. That's what I took away too. So the nature of the standards have to be experience-based and application, not about how much you can memorize, because you guys can do that already. Awesome. Thank you so much.
President Hagerman, or Vice President Hagerman, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just before we let them exit, again, amazing job. You guys are amazing. I just want to give a quick shout out to Shannon Etz from our team, who oversees the student advisory panel and has done an amazing job. She's done an amazing job working with these amazing kids. So good job, Shannon.
Thank you, guys. All right. Before the question I have is, do we take a break now or after the next item?
I would right after the next item.
Okay, so we'll do the next item and then we'll take a break. All right, so we are moving on to item 4B, Executive Director Ross.
Vice President Hagerman, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. We're going to continue to hear from a member of our student advisory panel.
Now it all makes sense. I'll put it all together.
So again, with us is Emilio Sands, the vice chair of the student advisory panel. I believe one of only 2 sophomores on the panel as well, so equally as impressive. One of the younger members of the group. Emilio, at his own volition, developed a pretty interesting resource that we wanted to just share with the board and share Emilio's story about this incredible work that he did. So, Emilio?
All right. Hello again. It's me again. I'm Emilio. I want to say a quick thank you to Miss Etz in the back. She's helped me a lot with just kind of giving me advice on this and on the panel. So I'm really grateful for Miss Etz. Also, quick thank you to Mr. Catanese. He's been an incredible mentor to me and so many other students. And it's really educators like him moving the needle for students like me. So I really appreciate you and all your help with this. So let's talk. This is the website I built. It's called Navegante. A quick summary of me. My name is Emilio. I'm a sophomore at Phoenix Country Day School. I'm also an intern at Camp Catanese, Mr. Catanese's foundation, and I'm an avid speech and debate competitor. Both of my parents immigrated from Mexico, and I'm bilingual. Okay. Oops. Yeah, could you just here? All right. So what is Navegante? It's a website that I developed on my own time, which is a directory and a map of bilingual/dual language immersion programs for Spanish and indigenous languages in the state. It also features AI features like an AI quiz that parents can take to input their own personal information and match with schools that are a good fit based on the algorithm that I created. The entire idea of why I created it is because this Board of Education approved the 50-50 model in 2020, and I wanted to centralize that information and make it easily accessible to parents across Arizona. How did I build it? I had some prior coding experience with being the captain of my robotics team, but I really want to take a second and pause and reflect on how AI helped me build this, because I think it just speaks to how AI is acting as an equalizer across the state, because I haven't received a formal computer science coding background, but thanks to AI, I was able to build this website that is already helping parents across the state. I used an AI web scraping, which was suggested to me by Mr. Catanese, to go over school district meeting minutes to find which schools actually had these 50-50 programs, as well as manually collecting the data by calling school districts and reaching out to schools themselves. And then again, I sought a lot of community feedback. I met with a ton of community leaders like Mr. Catanese, people from the Dual Language Teachers Network, Arizona Teachers of English. So a ton of different organizations were able to give me feedback to make this resource something that was easy to use and also beneficial for families across Arizona. We also have a really big emphasis on feedback on the website. So the idea is that it will be a self-correcting open source directory that will grow for years and years so that people know where to find these programs. We also have a scaling social media presence and a growing team. So it's going to be like a team of 8 of us trying to grow this website and get it to families across the state. Just for reference, we launched about 4 weeks ago. Since then, it's been featured in the AZ Republic, AZ Luminaria, and Telemundo most recently. And as well as tomorrow, it's going to be featured on Univision. So that's helped us reach over 250 users across the state. And we've received multiple support requests. So it's been really cool to see how real parents are already benefiting from this directory and just taking it into account as they seek options for their children's education. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Are there any questions about my story or the website?
Member Cantonese.
Not a question, Emilio, but I think everybody in here is very proud of you. And, you know, I've worked with thousands of students and you are special. And it's very easy for all of us to see you're 16 years old and what you're doing is it's not important to me that you built this website. What's important to me is that kids across the state realize that when they're your age, they can make a difference in their own communities. And so that's what this represents to me, is that you are not someone that's waiting for an adult to do something for change. You're yourself are doing that. And I think that you're a model for what other kids can do in this state, especially when they have an idea. You know, it's important that they say yes to themselves and they do it. So we're proud of you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cat.
Awesome. Dr. Cruz Rivera.
Yes, just wanted to add my voice to how proud we feel about the work that you have done. And as an engineer, as a bilingual person, as somebody who went through school learning English, I really appreciate the time and effort you have put into this. I also want to mention that something about your comment around AI. As we were thinking about AI more generally, as how it impacts pedagogy, how it impacts curriculum development, how it impacts the way we prepare our professors here at NAU to engage with the technology and understanding the ethical, the legal, the regulatory concerns, environmental that may be assigned or to the technology, the engagement piece to ensure that we're leveraging the positives and the possibilities that it has to better prepare students to be able to embark on projects such as the one you have. I think it's something important for this board to be thinking about in the near term. So thank you very much and great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I just want to thank the last 2 presentations and also the students of the month, because as much as we sometimes spend in bureaucracy, it's nice to see what's possible and look forward to what's coming in the future. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Clay had a comment too. I didn't mean to. Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you for that amazing presentation. I love things that are innovative, that are relevant, that can be used right now and can be applied today. And you've already proven that. People are using the app, but I wanted to let you know that we definitely need you. We need your leadership. We need your ingenuity and your vision. Students like you are going to bring us into the future. So I appreciate you very, very much and look forward to all the things you and your colleagues are going to do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the encouragement.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to take a break now. Executive Director Ross, how many minutes do you think?
Let's come back at 10:42, so 6 minutes.
10:42. It is.
Yeah. It's basically one slide. Yep.
Dr. Clay, Dr. Cruz-Rivera, are you back with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Dr. Cruz-Rivera. Okay. Dr. Hagerman, we have a quorum.
All right. We are now moving on to item 4C, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As you all know, March is quite often the ESA handbook meeting for the board. The board is charged in statute and in rule with approving a handbook annually for ESA by May 1st in rule, July 1st in statute. This is that annual presentation. With us today is the Chief Operating Officer from the Arizona Department of Education, Art Harding, to talk about this year's handbook. Art.
Good morning, Vice President Hagerman and board members. Again, I am Art Harding, the Chief of Operations at the department. I'm here because ESA sits within my portfolio, and Director Ward, who you're all familiar with, isn't able to be here today. So I'll take on this one. As Sean mentioned, there's a little bit of lag here. Okay. The handbook, the statute and rule is a little wonky with the handbook, I think it's fair to say, because even if you don't make changes, you still have to take it up every year. So sometimes if we have no changes, still have to have this meeting and talk it through and say, vote on it. So what you do have in front of you though, is the draft red line, and the only changes in there that we are suggesting, no substantive changes, only dates changing from 25, 26, 26, 27. So you'll see amendments in there, but just know it's just all dates, all technical. And then there's the rule as well. So just a reminder, like Sean said, you have some dates here. March 1, we get it to you guys. May, I think your rule has you adopt it, and July is when, or June, I think, is when the statute says it has to be adopted. So, but you guys are getting a good head start. This is the kind of main slide that I have to recommend to you guys. We don't recommend substantive changes to the handbook this year. And I'll tell you, there's three reasons why, which we'll talk about. And those are, the main one, I believe, I think everyone was here last year, the last adoption, which board member, maybe some, Dr. Haney wasn't. So last year in June, and my typo there, June 23, 2025, of course, was when you adopted the current handbook. It was a robust discussion. It actually started in around this time. We had a little bit of delay, a little hiccup. We went back, had big parent input, town hall, came back and made some changes to the handbook last year. Pretty substantive changes. There was a big discussion on how we wanted to address the supplemental materials and curriculum. So that's all in this current handbook. And one of the reasons that we're suggesting not making a big changes here is we're kind of early on in implementation. Sorry, it was 9 months ago. So this has been the year that we've been implementing it. It'd be a lot to ask to make any significant changes before we know how this whole thing kind of panned out over the year. The next reason I would say we recommend no changes this year is, for those of you not aware, we have the ESA call center. It's a pretty busy call center. We have analysts and operators on there, and they field thousands and thousands and thousands of calls. I think it's like 200 something a day, or 250 calls a day. So a lot of calls over the year. One thing we did notice though was that leading up to the handbook last year, there were a lot of handbook calls, a lot of questions, a lot of, what are we doing here? What are you guys going to do? Then as soon as this board approved it, within like a few days, calls have dropped off on handbook specific questions. They've remained that way all year long. I'll just say, obviously not nobody calls, but very few people, a significantly low number of people call regarding the handbook or encouraging us to change the handbook. And I think one of the reasons for that is back to that kind of reason one, what we've been doing this last year. There's been a lot of really good work at the department to kind of create that, improve our consistency on what's approved, what parents can expect on the program. We've had a really good record of judicial confirmation on ADE. Our decisions have been upheld over and over again at the ALJ level. So we're kind of getting this, for a relatively new program, we're really kind of getting into the consistency side of things. Obviously, it doesn't mean everyone's happy all the time. And with Arizona having such kind of a robust ESA program, it's always going to be difficult. We don't have a very curated statute that tells us exactly what is okay and what's not. So our staff has to do a lot of okay, well, this works for you, parent, but won't work for you because your child has different needs, or so there's a lot of back and forth with our staff. But I think it's going well in terms of parents beginning to understand what's eligible, what's not. As a matter of fact, I think it was brought up. We did our study a couple weeks ago that showed one, that the program is already wildly successful. As President Haley mentioned, we are actually at 102,821 students this morning. So we have a lot of parents on this program. The study we did showed we have very minimal misuse. I mean, we're talking like, and 1.9% is not even misuse, that's just unallowable items. 0.3% is what our analysts would call more egregious. I know you wouldn't necessarily even call it fraud necessarily. Some of it can still be innocent mistakes, but it's egregious enough for us to call it kind of the serious stuff. So very little misuse of this program, which again goes to the idea that I think it's on the right track here. And then the third reason we're recommending no changes this year is we did hire on a ESA parent liaison and a deputy director who's kind of overseeing our parent liaison. And Janelle Wood, who many of you may know, very connected in the school choice community. She's held a dozen or more parent meetings since the month after you approved that last year's handbook. We brought her on and started parent meetings because I know this board wanted to get more parent input. So on this next slide, it shows this is kind of a list of some of the meetings that she's held, both around the state, individually with new parents, with parents who have been on the program. So we're trying to get to kind of everybody, trying to get regionally, get out. There's some stuff in Tucson. I think she's planning one for Southern Arizona, I believe, in the coming future. So we heard you loud and clear. So we do want to, we kind of created that position to hear just that. And the ultimate point of this is that she's also not getting reports of people clamoring for handbook changes. It's more of a, let's make this thing work. Just stay consistent. I think major changes create a little bit difficulty with this program. So those are the main reasons why we would recommend no changes at this time. Obviously, the board has their ability to do what they want to do, but ADE's official recommendation is no substantive changes outside of the red lines, which is just changing the year. Any questions?
So I got just one kind of process question. I don't know if it's in statute and rules. I'm guessing it's rules that it's every so many years that we consider major changes. We haven't necessarily been on that pattern, but is it in rule?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. You're correct, Vice President Hagerman. There is rule that says that the board should avoid substantive changes to the handbook, but every 3 years. The board does have purview to overrule that, but that is in rule, yes.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. President Haley, sorry.
Thank you so much. It's hard to keep track of everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Harding, for your presentation. I'm curious about some of the parent engagement. It appeared some were large groups and some were parent one-on-one meetings. I'm interested to know what sort of feedback was provided and if you could shed additional light on that last slide that you presented.
Sure, President Haley, Vice President, members. I would actually, it's a good question. What I had asked Janelle specifically was how much was specific to the handbook? And her, the response was not a significant amount. What I didn't ask is, okay, what are you hearing and can we do a report on it? Maybe that's a good thing we can do for the board since she's had that. I think that's a great question on kind of, we are restarting that board, the state board report, but we had kind of all agreed to not do for a little bit, but the Auditor General said we have to do. And maybe we can have a portion in there from Janelle to kind of talk about what is she hearing, because we're planning to keep doing these. And so you'll have constant updates, of what's being talked about out there. I know a lot of her ones were with the new parents. So they just had a lot of new parent questions, of how do I know if this is okay, how, or this is not, where are the places to go, where, are there, places where we can get support and that sort of thing. So particularly the new parent ones were just kind of your basic program questions. I'll ask her more about the big Tucson one. I think there's another big Phoenix one that were kind of the folks who'd been involved already, but happy to get that for you, ma'am.
Yeah, I would be really grateful to hear what that feedback was. And frankly, it would have been helpful in advance of today's meeting because I'm still a little concerned about the language. As you know, there were several different versions that were considered last year and during the March, April, June, or May, I forgot May. There's quite a lot of conversation. And as you know, I think we heard about 3 hours of public comment at the March meeting last year on this specific topic. And the language specifically in the handbook, and it's still there now, is consistent with ARS 15-240, 2402. The department will approve expenses that are reasonably related to educational or vocational purposes based on consideration of the following factors. And then it kind of lists out 4 different bullets. I remain to be concerned. I voted against the handbook last year because of that language. I believe it was the department's efforts to maybe compromise on the price caps that were in earlier versions. But I would have really appreciated to have some deeper insight into how that specific provision was carried forward over the last 9 months in advance of us considering today's handbook.
Right.
More of, I guess, a comment and not necessarily a rhetorical, more of a rhetorical comment than an actual question.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, do I have a motion that the board adopt the ESA handbook for FY27 for the 26-27 school year as presented?
So move.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Vice President Hagerman, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, may I recommend a roll call vote?
Can we have a roll call?
So again, we will be doing a roll call vote for the motion. President Haley.
I'd like to explain my vote.
Go ahead. Yes.
As I just shared, I'm still concerned about the language that is included in the handbook, specifically that it will approve expenses that are reasonably related. That was something I brought up last year. While it appears that families have not necessarily engaged, and we have heard not many comments from parents with concerns about that language, out of my just continued concern about the language, I will be voting no on today's handbook. That said, I'm a huge supporter of ESA and believe it's an incredible program that benefits now nearly 103,000 students. And I support the work of the department, but I continue to be concerned about that language in the handbook. So I vote no.
Vice President Hagerman?
Yes.
Superintendent Horn?
Yes.
Member Catanese?
Yes.
Dr. Clay?
Yes.
Dr. Cruz Rivera.
So I would like to explain my vote as well. I am voting to approve this handbook, recognizing that there are at least 2 citizen initiatives that may be on the ballot in November. So making any significant changes to the handbook before we hear from Arizonans will cause additional and unnecessary confusion for parents and families in the coming year. I do look forward to revisiting this issue after the election.
Member Haney.
Yes.
Member Kravickas.
Yes.
Vice President Hagerman, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, the motion passes.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to 4D, Executive Director Russ.
Do we know what the vote was?
It was 7-1, Superintendent Horn. Vice President Hagerman, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Item D in the general session is part of the intensive revision process to the A through F school accountability system the board is undertaking. As a reminder of that system, the board is holding study sessions for each of the primary indicators that make up the A through F system. So proficiency, growth, graduation rate. Very thankfully led by the Department of Education's Chief Accountability Officer and his team, Sean Smith. Though those study sessions lead the board to ask questions, which are turned into prompts that the board then votes in a public meeting to send to the technical advisory committees to investigate. The technical advisory committees investigate those prompts and then send recommendations back to the board. This is the first batch of those recommendations from the technical advisory committees. And in a way that makes sense, this first batch is a focus on a framework for how the technical advisory committees would like to pursue the revision of the indicators, in particular growth and proficiency, within the A through F accountability system. So today is really about a large framework. Today's about we're calling it a capital M methodology that will, if approved, allow the technical advisory committees to dive into the system and bring more specific recommendations for each indicator to the board over the next few months. So with us today to explain that in much greater detail is the Chief Accountability Officer from ADE, Sean Smith. Sean?
Thank you, President Haley, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Thank you for having me. So appreciate the opportunity to speak today and review some of the work that we've done in the technical advisory committees about indicator scoring. So we'll jump right in. Oops, is this the right one?
It is. There's a little delay.
Oh, there we go. Going way too far. So we'll revisit the board's direction to the technical advisory committee. This is from a few months ago. For the last several meetings, we wanted to start each meeting off with this. So we'd have this slide at the beginning just to focus our work. I won't read the whole thing, but to hit a couple highlights, the board directed us to look at a data-informed approach to setting indicator cut scores. We wanted to examine in particular with growth and proficiency, how we could adjust those so that they would work within the overall system and create a data-informed system that also has some consistency and concordance with the current system as it stands. Okay. So Sean came up with a great analogy to kind of explain the process we've been going through. If we're setting goals, if this was a weight loss goal, you could do it in an appropriate way. You could look at data. You could look at your own personal information. You could say, okay, where's my
Sorry, board members, we are having some technical difficulties here. Give me just 1 second while I bring up the presentation.
All right, we are back, I think.
Gotta get back in the zone talking about my personal weight loss journey here. So as I mentioned before, we'll carry back to this analogy, a healthy approach to weight loss. Look at the data, look at where I'm starting at, what's realistic, what kind of exercise can I incorporate, all that kind of stuff. Considering the factors, and most importantly, where am I starting and where do I realistically want to end up? A less healthy way is just to watch whatever movie's on TV and see who the celebrity is. Be like, oh, I think we talked about like Ariana Grande. She's very popular in Wicked right now. I think I want to weigh as much as Ariana Grande next week. That probably won't work for like a whole lot of reasons, but it takes out of the equation what's reasonable, what's healthy, where am I starting, and it only just focuses on kind of an unrealistic end goal. So if we'll look at the next slide, we'll kind of put that in terms of what we're talking about in accountability. Does it want to go to the next one? Sorry. So same analogy on the left with a healthy weight loss example, but a healthy approach to indicator scoring. If we want it to be realistic, ultimately the goal is to help support student achievement and school improvement. So we can look at the baseline where we're starting right now. And again, we're lucky to have 8 years of data where we can go back and see, here's where the original ask was. Where are we now in comparison to that? And then what does the research tell us? What does the data tell us about where we could reasonably be? And what kind of time frame do we need to take to get there? So hopefully this all sounds a lot like a SMART goal. What's achievable, what's relevant, and what time frame do we need to look at to accomplish that? So looking at this next slide, when we talk about the capital M methodology, this has been our approach to kind of solving for this system-wide thing. What do we need to have so that all of these indicators now work together? Sean likes to use the analogy of, we've had a model that examines the cake, and now we're taking it apart into its constituent ingredients. We need to make sure that our metrics can still work together when we're looking at eggs, flour, sugar independently and not just the whole. So the first recommendation is that what makes sense as the width of a grade band is a standard deviation. So that's when we measure, all right, here's all the outcomes. How much variability do we see? A point that's within a standard deviation of another point is probably fairly similar. So it makes sense for us to say, all right, here's our kind of cut line, our baseline, a standard deviation above that. Now we're seeing more change in performance than is just typical variability. That makes sense for an A. If we're seeing below that, that makes sense for a C as a way to gauge what's noise, what's regular variability, and when are we starting to see something that's a noticeable departure from a data-informed baseline. The second recommendation was to recalibrate the baseline. So what we're talking about when we say baseline, historically we've taken the average score and we've made that as the baseline for a B letter grade. So kind of split everything in half. Anything above that baseline was an A or a B, depending on how far above you were. And then below that baseline was a C, D, or an F, depending on how far you were below. What we're seeing in the data and the tax recommendation is that baseline has moved.
Hold on 1 second.
Yes, sir. Yeah, please. Yep. So every year in September, when we look at cut scores and we bring recommendations to the board for cut scores, initially, so 2017 for elementary schools, 2022 for high schools when we switched to ACT, we set a baseline. We said, all right, what's the average score for every school? And we drew that baseline right down the middle. And essentially, we have in the principles of agreement, we say like we talk about schools that were above average or well below average. So that baseline became the average line, and above it was A's and B's. Below it were C's, D's, and F's. Oh, yeah.
What I don't understand though is, and I know this is kind of historical, we've already done it, but if the baseline is the average, isn't that the C? So below would be the D's and F's, not C, D, because I feel like that, if I'm understanding you right, that would explain why the curve has always been skewed.
Thank you. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Krukovic, that's a great question. So yeah, initially the board decided, you're exactly right. What does the baseline mean? When we take the average, like what do we mean by that? And so this is again history, but in 2017, the definition was anything above average is going to be A's, B's, anything below average, C's, D's, and F's. And you're right. There could be an approach where you say, we're going to put the average right in the middle, and we're going to say that's a C, and we center a standard deviation on that. That approach would work. So part of this is we're just building on the history that decision was made to say, all right, that average line, if you're above it, you're an A, B. If you're below it, C, D, and F. And the second part of your question is really good as well, specifically, and it's exactly what we're talking about. That baseline was set in 2017 for most of the schools in the state, and we've seen it move. And I think you asked like, well, why are we seeing this change in how many A's and B's and C's are? Schools have essentially, they've done what we've asked. We said, heck, here's the metrics, here's what we want you to shoot for. And we've seen that baseline move away from that 2017 average to where now we've got a baseline that's higher. Does that make sense, or does that cloud the question?
A little bit. I mean, I'll probably have more questions later, but I'm struggling with, if the average, a bell is average is in the middle and everything goes to the side, but regardless of what we do, the bell curve always looks the same. And it's hard from the public's perspective to say, oh, we've done what we've asked, but yet test scores have gone down. I know it's convoluted. I know it's much more complex and I'm oversimplifying it, but from a public perception, it's really hard to see how that system has worked when the performance hasn't gone up.
Right.
I'm sorry if I detract, but when you said that, it got my attention.
No, I think you're asking the exact right questions. And fundamentally, that's what we want to accomplish with the accountability system is good communication to all the people who are trying to use it. And yeah, as we've seen over the years, we've seen grades kind of increase. As you mentioned, there's a lot of factors that contribute to that besides just straight pass rates. But again, what we're seeing is the TACs are looking at this and they're observing exactly what you're saying. We've seen the scores, the average score is increasing over time. We'll say that separately from a statement of just the pass rate, but we're saying the system, what it's measuring, since 2017, we're seeing scores increase. And that has led to now the public starts to ask that same question, like, hey, we're seeing, a lot of grade increases, but the system hasn't necessarily adjusted to that. And what they're saying is, if we recalibrate that baseline and say, this is the original ask, we don't want to move to something that's totally separated from that. Again, in the weight loss analogy, we don't want to forget where our actual starting point was and what we originally asked schools to do in the system. But the data is telling us we can move it further along and still provide good communication, but also set some more ambitious goals that tell people a little more about what's happening. So yeah, that second recommendation is going to be recalibrate the baseline. We know where it was at in 2017. We can see where the data is telling us now. Set a time frame that tells us how long do we need to get fully to that new baseline of what we're seeing in 2026. Does that make sense?
I think in general, we probably need to keep going to have a coherent presentation.
So their other recommendation is concordance. Again, just briefly, that is, don't make the system say something completely different than what it says now. Keep in mind that schools were asked originally to do what they were in 2017. Keep communication that doesn't upset all the people around the state who have to use this for various things. Okay, we'll jump to the next slide. Things that we've been considering as we've approached this, there are exogenous factors, or factors outside of a school's control. So where they're located, if they're rural or urban, small, large. And primarily we want to anchor each of the indicators to student achievement. We want to make sure that each thing that we're measuring sends a signal back that informs schools about how they're progressing towards improved student outcomes. We'll look really quickly at the next slide with the application that we've been using to analyze that. So there's a lot going on here, but this is a tool we've been using to kind of evaluate each indicator on its own. So what you can see, there's a green line on the left there that says, here's that baseline, historic baseline. If we set the indicator cut right there, if we set an indicator baseline right there, we would have perfect concordance. The system would say the exact same thing as it does now in terms of how many A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's there are. The black dotted line is telling us this is what the data says now in 2026 would be a reasonable baseline. And the control we have on the side is, all right, how many years do we need to take to move the system towards that new baseline? So we have a time-bound goal based on those two data points, historic and current. We'll jump to the next slide. All right, so just pointing out a little bit of what I said. I'm not going to dwell on the unscaled baseline. That's kind of where things are in the indicator world right now. Along the bottom, you can see we have a chart for concordance that lets us measure how similar is the signal we're getting back to what we see currently in the system. The odds ratios in that middle graph are going to tell us how much is each indicator associated with factors that are external to a school. And then on the right, as I mentioned, the correlation to actual student achievement. So we'll look at our example on the next slide of the growth indicator. And this should illustrate what we're representing or what we're proposing in terms of the growth indicator. So if we take this approach for the big M methodology and we say, all right, here's how we're going to set growth cuts. We're going to look at our historic baseline. We're going to look at what 2026 is telling us. A 2-year goal is what people said they wanted to settle on. So, all right, we're going to have something about halfway between there for the first year. And we're going to go fully to that data-informed baseline the second year. That gives us a very large degree of concordance. This is if we were to take 2025 data right now and we say, all right, we're regrading you with this new approach. We would still have a very similar thing. We see a 9% decrease in A's, 3% decrease in B's, 8% decrease in C's. So we can see it shift a little bit, but it's not monumental like we've seen sometimes when we bring those standard deviation resets to the cut scores where it completely resets the whole system. So this preserves some of the history and saying, this is what was originally asked to do. Here's where we're trying to move. Even if we took schools to this level right now, we could take it right now and it would still be fairly reasonable. And what we anticipate is that with the goal going forward, schools can raise to meet that since they have time to adjust. Next slide. This is our odds ratio. So the text is tiny, I apologize. But on the right side, or excuse me, the left side, you can see at the very top, there's rural schools, small schools, large schools, low poverty, and high poverty. What we want to see is most of these dots coming as close to that center line as possible. If they're right on that center line, what that's telling us is the odds of a school getting an A in this indicator. So for a high poverty school, the odds are 1.6 times higher than just any school in the state. We want to see something that's very close to 1-to-1. We want to say, you know, it doesn't really matter if you're big, small, rural, high poverty, low poverty, your odds of getting an A are exactly the same as any other school in the state. We're never going to see something where it's perfect, but all of these have a 1 point something multiplier, which means they're very close. And we have those error bars that kind of suggest the closer those are to the actual line, the more we're seeing that we're picking up, as the statute indicates, the impact of a school and not the impact of these external factors. And then the last thing we'll look at for growth, we take a look at this for each of the indicators. So this has a 0.78 correlation. That's a very high correlation to student achievement. So we've got a growth metric as we're presenting here. Again, we're not settling on a specific approach for growth. This is just the overall approach. But for each one, we want to look at and see, all right, when we say you're doing well in growth, does that actually translate to kids doing better? So in this case, we're seeing that there is a strong correlation there. And that gives us, again, we take into account, we've got a system that communicates and doesn't disrupt the communication to all the different stakeholder groups who use it. We see that the odds are associated very low with external factors, and that there's a very high correlation to student achievement and outcomes. That gives us some confidence to then be able to propose a specific method. So that's the overall methodology that we're looking to set a data-informed goal in a certain time period. Do you want to jump in, Sean?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Sean, just to clarify a point, the vote today is to approve the framework. You're not actually bringing numbers to the board.
Right.
Those would be brought later, and then the board would have a range of sort of cut scores from which to examine, observe, and choose from. Okay, so just to clarify, today is about framework.
Yeah.
Before we kind of go to questions, I'll have my kind of but first, my thanks. You know that I sit in the ATACs not as a participant, but just to kind of wrap my head around the work you're doing as a principal and superintendent, as someone who trains principals. I really think about this work in like 3 areas that have to be balanced. One is like, how do you set a goal so you have a sense of the direction or where you want the system to go? How do you build clarity so you understand where you're at right now? And then what does that support look like to connect those 3? And you have to work all 3 levels. My personal feeling as an educator is the system has lacked clarity. I can see a school that's an A or a B and not necessarily be able to see inside and understand what's going on. And so the work with indicator scores and the work that you're doing and the sessions we have, I think is working towards helping with that. And then after we get that, we have to start thinking about how do we set those direction, those goals we go. And then finally, how do we help schools kind of connect where they're at to where they're going? So at one level, we're talking about that kind of directionality, but also with going to indicators, I'm hoping that it brings a lot more clarity. We haven't gotten to CCRI and readiness, and I think that's where some of the murkiness will hopefully get cleared up to help us so that we can see inside of what's going on with the school. Because at one level, we're talking about the number of grades, but I'm more interested in what's going on in those schools till we have clarity around it. And so I thank you guys for the work you're doing. And I just want to keep ourselves that we're always looking at each of those 3 buckets and making sure we're working on all 3 at the same time so we can move schools up. With that, what questions do we have? Superintendent Horn.
This is an excellent presentation. I think it's an excellent approach to reforming the system, given the legislation that we have. I want people to know that I'm lobbying to change the system. I think when you take disparate factors like proficiency and growth, and you're forced to combine them to one score, you're ending up with a somewhat meaningless number. And we've experienced that where people comment, I thought this was an A school. It says it's an A school, but their proficiency rate is 30% because the growth brought them up. So what I'm lobbying for with the legislature is to have 2 separate scores. Now, when people look this up on our website at the department, we make that clear, the different numbers. But the schools will advertise a single score. And so I'm asking the legislature to consider allowing us to have 2 scores. I'm not sure we should do with the minor factors, but as between growth and proficiency, I think those should be reported separately. That would be a much more meaningful information.
Yeah. Thank you. Member Kavickas.
Thank you. Point of clarification. Is what you're describing the component scoring? What is the difference between what you're lobbying for and what just happened to the component scoring?
The difference would be we wouldn't give a school one grade, say you're an A school or a B school. We would give them 2 grades. So they would say we're C on proficiency, but we're A on growth. And that would be a much more meaningful than a combined score, which is extremely misleading in my opinion, no matter how well we do it. And I think Sean is the perfect person to be doing this and is doing a great job with it. But no matter how you do it, I think it's misleading. You need to give those 2 numbers or 2 grades separately to provide meaning information to parents.
Thank you. So to staff, then, if I understand the law now, the component scoring, we are going to give a grade, a score for growth and proficiencies, but yet there still will be a summative, correct? That's the distinction?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn. Yeah, Member Kravickas, you're correct. So in statute, the requirement is to give a summative letter grade and then a letter grade for each of those primary indicators. So proficiency, growth, English language learners for high school, grad rate, and then CCRI for high school, acceleration readiness for elementary school. So yeah, so currently, or very soon upon, we will have letter grades for each of those indicators, which is there's a subtle difference between that and what Superintendent Horn's talking about.
Well, it's a major difference in what will go on the signs that the schools put up and their communications to the public. Nobody's going to be able to say, I'm an A school with a 30% proficiency anymore. They can say, I'm an A school on growth, but they're going to have to say what their proficiency grade is. And I think that's much more meaningful for parents.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. And I can thank you for Dr. Hagerman for your comments as well. I've sat in on enough TACs over the years to know the incredible amount of work that's gone into this. I commend you. I would love to still follow up with you because I'm not comfortable with it. And part of it is I don't understand it. And if I don't, and I'm pretty well versed in accountability systems. If I don't understand it, that's a concern for me. But I also want to go back to the weight loss because I can talk weight loss for a long time. So, yeah, I could say, you know what? I love those Good American jeans, look really cool. If I looked like Kourtney Kardashian, I could probably buy a size 4 in those. Those are conversations in social media, correct? But I think the analogy is missing any sense of urgency because in reality, not for everybody, in reality, you may have a doctor saying your blood pressure is at 200, you're pre-diabetic, you list things, and there's this, you have to get to this number by this time. It's life and death. And I think we're missing a sense of urgency in that right now. And that's what I'm concerned with. Yeah, I understand the examples, but I think there's a third analogy that has to happen. And that's that 60% of our third graders are not proficient right now. To me, that is a crisis. And we have to have a great sense of urgency. And that's the analogy. So I'll stretch that analogy. It's that life and death. You just got some really scary news from the doctor. And you're going to start contemplating really extreme measures to get to that goal. But I feel like we're there. And so that's partly why I'm also uncomfortable with it. But I would love to meet with you after because I really do want to get my arms around it. But I couldn't help but feel like, to a certain extent, and again, admittedly, not understanding it, that we're going back to the tried and true system that we've done. It's been with AYP. It's been things like having a goal, and then we're gonna continue. When they don't meet the goal, we'll just change the goal numbers. I mean, we've done this, and that was the part. And I'm hoping I'm wrong. And so again, I'd love to meet with you and go through that. But that was the other part that I'm like, we've done this. We've set goals and we don't hit them. And then we just change the goals. But thank you for all your work.
Member Haney.
I'm going to ask a question that's probably going to expose more my lack of knowledge in this. And Sean, I really appreciate the work that you've put into this. I appreciate the analogy of the weight loss because I think more in terms of narrative than I do in terms of numbers. Statistics was my least favorite class ever. And but I appreciate those that understand it and can use it because I think using data to inform our decisions is vital and very critical. So to be able to to use that and process it in such a way that we make good decisions, I think is so good. So this is my question, and it's referencing what Member Krifikis and the superintendent have talked about in terms of the 2 scores. I appreciate that clarity is key in terms of from a public perspective, a parent perspective, when they are determining how good a school is doing. So the question is relative to the summative grade. How will the growth score and the proficiency score, how does that create the summative score? Is there a weighting there, or is it 50-50? What does that mean?
Great question. President Haley, Superintendent Horn, Member Haney. Great question. Yeah. So if I can make another analogy, kind of what we put out on the letter grades is almost like a GPA. And we're talking about now, like, all right, we're going to put in the report card now every class, you know. So if you're taking home a 3.0 GPA, does that mean you're great at math? You're exactly right. There's a weighting to each individual piece that informs, you know, how well you do in an individual area. For instance, in elementary schools, half of the model is assigned to growth. So the thinking at that time was the most important thing that information we can be giving to schools is, are they moving kids forward? In elementary school, it's going to be about, are you getting growth? And that shifts in high school, the desire being, you know, at 11th grade, we want to be much more focused on proficiency. How close are they to that mark? So yeah, there's different weights that inform each piece of it. And this would then open it up so we can see, all right, you know, you're taking home a B letter grade, instead of that just saying, oh, everything's kind of middle overall. It says you might be doing great in proficiency, but your kids are struggling to grow. They're coming to you very high, but maybe they're not growing, or vice versa. Your kids are coming to you low, but you're raising them a lot. And our hope is that for everybody who uses letter grades, that will be much more informative, where you can say and make, as Rebecca's comments, you know, how do I make decisions as a parent, as a policymaker? It gives me hopefully a better landscape. So yeah, those weightings adjust in each model, and they inform the overall grade, which then makes it harder to take apart those individual pieces as well.
Right. So thank you again, Sean, and thank you, Superintendent, because I think having the 2 scores, I think for every district will be extremely helpful for those of us who don't like statistics.
For those who like statistics, even more so.
Yeah. Dr. Clay.
Good morning, Sean. Thank you for the lesson again and again and again. And little by little, I'm getting my head around it so that I can explain this to other people, you know, just like everyone else is saying. So when I look at this, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we look at our final grade, that is the cake, right? That is what we see, the end result. But what we're really trying to look at is to adjust the ingredients. Okay, going into the ingredients, looking, should we change regular sugar and put stevia in it? Should we, you know, use this type of flour? No, we should, you know, if we don't know the root to the fruit, then we can't move forward. So I see that you and your team struggling on that sweet spot on what is the root to the fruit, what are the pieces of that cake mix recipe that we may have to adjust because of, if we look at the diet and everything, I can't eat certain types of flour, or I can't eat certain types of sugar, or I need an alternative to butter or whatever. But if we don't look at each one of these parts very carefully, the schools will not know how to move forward. They will just be, I would say, beating the wind or running in the sand, which gets everybody frustrated. I know this is a very, very painful thing to do, but I know once everything is out there on the table, picked apart, which takes a lot of time, I think we're going to be in a better place. So thank you so much for your time, because like I said, I'm still constantly wrapping my head around it, and then having to explain to the community what, why, and how we're doing things. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Kavickas.
Sean, can we go back to slide 7? Can you walk me again through the white line, the black dotted line, the green line, the blue line?
Yeah, please. So as we're pulling it up, so just conceptually, the things we're trying to balance are the historical ask, what the data is telling us now, and a path to get there.
Okay, when you say the historical acts you alluded to on the elementary was 2017,
Right.
is that the cut score that we set?
Exactly. Yep. So each of these we're looking at for ease of operation, just say this is the cut score. Where do we set the line for a B? So essentially,
Sean, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So statistically, you're looking at the summative score from 2017, looking at that data, and now you're going to apply those same ranges to indicators.
Effectively, yeah. Like we're exactly. So we're kind of looking at what would it look like if we'd applied it in 2017? What would it look like if we started from scratch in 2025? And that's those two lines.
And then the other thing you're working on in your meetings is like which of those indicators look like, because you're seeing noise in the indicators. So you have to clean up the indicators and then figure out a process once you have cleaner data, how to set goals within each indicator.
Yes, exactly right. And that's crucial because when everything's crammed together, what we kind of see is, and Sean's mentioned this I think in board meetings, but also definitely in TAC meetings. For example, proficiency. We know we have some struggles in proficiency. We want to make sure we report that. But the proficiency indicator right now says everybody, even basis schools, are doing bad at proficiency. And then on the other side, it was kind of saying, well, everybody except for basis schools is doing great in growth. And what we need to tune it to now, like Dr. Hagerman is saying, what's really happening? How do we give people a clear and understandable view of when are you doing well in proficiency? When are you struggling? And so, yeah, we're looking instead of just that overall system and saying everything together, that green line would have been the 2017 line, everything together. The black line would be 2025, everything together. What we're saying is, all right, let's look at, that's what the system was communicating overall. It was saying like, here's what constitutes an A, a B, or a C.
So I'm sorry. So slide 7 is showing us, it's not just proficiency, it's the summative scores, the cut scores for the summative scores. So the green dotted line is what the cut score that we set in 2017.
Essentially, it's trying to take us back to like Sean was referencing earlier. We want to look at a big picture, like how do we make the system even work first of all, before we get into those ingredients. So we have to kind of see exactly what you're saying. The system has been a summative system. What information has it been providing? Where it started in 2017 and where it is now. So yeah, we look at that summative system to inform and say, okay, here's what it would have said if we were just, in this case, let's say we were going to take growth and make that the only indicator, and we set it exactly the same as we did in 2017. That dotted green line on the left would have been the threshold for a B. Saying, all right, if we just took this in 2017, where's kind of that average line?
But shouldn't that be a threshold for a C? As I'm saying, that goes back to my earlier question. Average is the C, not the B.
So that's out of my purview to decide philosophically what that means. So the board decided in 2017 that was the cut between a B and a C. Like I said, what you're saying 100% valid? There's even part of me that's like, hey, we could center, let's just say a C is in the middle, average is dead set in the middle, and you could center and say like anything standard deviation outside of that. That would be a completely valid approach. The clarification I just want to make is that just wasn't what was done in 2017. So we're trying to not lose, again, like part of the balance, as Dr. Hagerman mentioned, those 3 lenses that we're looking at for 3 different audience groups and different purposes, it also gets used in all kinds of other places around the state. So one of the goals that we're trying to balance is how do we continue to provide communication that's different, that is consistent without upsetting the system so it doesn't wreck everything that everybody uses to interpret it. So if it would be like, we're going to switch from Fahrenheit to Celsius, if we did that immediately, we say, okay, 90's hot in Fahrenheit, so that's still the bar for hot in Celsius. It would shake up the whole communication. It would say there's 0 hot days, there's 365 freezing cold days because there's no temperature. Everything's averaging out on Celsius to like 30 degrees. When we're switching to that new paradigm, we don't want to lose the communication of conceptually what have we been saying, and we can argue and or not argue, but like we can discuss, has what we've been saying been good or valid? Well, we don't know, but we don't want to totally shift it and say now there's this whole new thing, and everybody that used to be an F is now an A. Everybody that used to be an A is now an F. So it's a delicate dance to try and maintain concordance while still moving forward and breaking it apart.
I think this is the disconnect, though. So schools may have understood that, but I was there when we signed the law. And the whole selling point of it from Governor Jeb Bush was that people understand A to F. And people understand that C is average. And the original legislation, which I know is gone now, did say that C was average. So we may have set that cut score for a B, and the schools understood that, public did not. I'm not even sure I understood it after how many years here. And so I'm kind of wrapping my head around it. But that's a huge disconnect. C is average. That was the whole reason we liked letter grades, or some people liked letter grades, is because we thought people knew what it meant. And then there's above average, and then there's A, and down. So I want to put a pin on that for further conversation. But so if I'm looking at 7, the dotted green line is the cut score for what we called average of the B in 2017. How did we, if performance hasn't gone up, how did the bar get to the dotted black line move forward?
There's been a lot of factors. So there's been some changes to the model. What we had coming out of COVID changed some of the growth signal. And then importantly, not everything is anchored. So the law specifies that it has to have non-test measures, and it has to have measures of both proficiency and growth. So it does not, the letter grade does not tie an exact restatement of what we see in pass rates. So we have in general seen pass rates. We saw them kind of go down during COVID, come back up, and then maintain some similarities. There's a whole lot of dynamics going on there anyways. But in general, what we've seen is for a variety of reasons, we've seen the rest of that, 70% of the model, for example, in K-8, moving in that direction, and that takes that line further forward.
I think the other thing that this is kind of aha-ing for me this morning is I thought we were going to do it the opposite. Because I remember when we discussed the components, we were talking about the ability to calibrate goals within each of them, which was a big selling point, at least for me. But now I feel like we're starting at the summative and setting these goals. And I guess that's the other thing I'm trying to wrap my brain about is I think this would make a little bit more sense for me if we were looking at this for each individual component. Like here was where we were in 2017. Here's where we are now. Where do we want to go? But kind of doing it from this big summative perspective is kind of hurting my head.
So let me jump in. So in my thought, the reason we have to do this is because each indicator score is at this point so noisy that you cannot do, because what she's proposing would be absolutely valid if we could look at indicator scores in a way and see clarity, but we can't. And so we have to clear up how that system functions. But then you're trying to figure out how do we set goals on this as we're trying to clear up each of the indicators. Because if you looked at, like you would say, growth, because it stops at 50, doesn't look at the full scope of the data and amplifies lower performing scores, you can't look at that at an indicator level in the same way. And so the problem is there's like multiple problems you're having to deal with the system at the same time. And so you're using the summative score, which is the only thing that has something that has a normative distribution, to try to figure out how to get logic as you try to clear up each of the scores and then set goals for them. So I think that's where you're wanting to go, but you have to deal with you're having to deal with like 3 or 4 problems at the same time. Am I kind of framing this correctly?
Exactly right. Yep. What do we anchor it to? Yes, thank you, Vice President Hagerman.
Which
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I just think we're very lucky to have a vice chair who has such a great understanding of what Sean is presenting. I'm really grateful.
I took good notes in the meetings.
Which makes sense to me. I've heard that. But I feel like we're preemptively setting the goals without looking at the components, which again, I thought part of the goal of the component scoring or the advantage was to be able to set individual goals for each component. But I feel like we're almost truncating that, but obviously could be very much. And like if I were to look at this, growth is obviously just more complicated just by its design of SGPs. But if I was to look at it at proficiency, I could say, and I'm making up numbers. In 2017, we had, I don't know, 47% third graders reading. Now we have 39%. We want to get to 70. I mean, those goals, that's more sensible to me. And I picked 72 because that's what the progress meter has for, Education Forward Arizona. That's their progress meter goal. That would make more sense to me. But I feel like if we're doing it the summative, we're almost preempting our ability to do it for the components.
So President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, Member Kravickas, again, what's being addressed today is the framework, the methodology. And the methodology, the thing to keep in mind is Sean's giving you an example on this graph of where the baseline is established and where the data says the baseline could be, but you all will vote on that could be. So Sean is and the technical advisory committees are going to bring you a range of outcomes. They're not going to bring you one
per indicator,
not one number, but a range of numbers to show, some more in concordance, some less, and then what does that mean? So they're not going to bring you just one number and say this is the goal, that's what you're voting on. You're actually going to establish the goal for each indicator. So I believe what you're asking for is exactly what's happening here. This is just an example. Yes.
Yeah.
This is just a visual to show you the bigger picture, which is baseline data says we're here. Data says we could be here. And then what would that look like? What would it look like if we were here or here? So basically you all will direct Sean and the TACs to give you a range of numbers, within, and I'm just going to give an example. You could say something like, give us a range within 1 standard deviation, within 1.5, within 2. And then Sean, they can model and map, bring you a plethora of choices. And you will do that. You will vote on for each indicator, you'll set cut scores. And then you'll revisit the entire system for weights as well. So I think everything you're asking for is literally what's coming.
Yeah. So basically what you're going to end up bringing by indicator is here's a comfortable goal, here's a stretch goal, here's an aggressive goal. And then we as a board are going to have to decide how by indicator, how much we want to lean into that indicator. But then like Sean says, ultimately, we're also going to have to look at the balancing act of the ingredients. Should readiness really be 10%? What should be in that? What should be the balance between growth and proficiency? So the dilemma is we have a lot of tools at our hands to help us out, but it's also like Member Kravickas decided we're going to need a lot of Java because it's going to be a big lift as we get there.
Thank you for your patience with me, and I'll try to wrap my head around it. I do want to say for the record, there's got to be a stronger sense of urgency, especially if we're going to use that weight loss analogy. There's the person who's diabetic, who's got high blood pressure, and the doctor's saying you're going to have a stroke if you don't lose weight. That's the scenario, because I believe that's where we're at with reading. So thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, let me read my thing. All right, seeing none, do I have a motion that the board adopt the Technical Advisories Committee's recommendation for methodology employed to revise the growth and proficiency as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Member Kravickas.
I vote aye since we are going to do it for individually, but I also want to throw out there that I want to make sure that we're embedding in that conversation how static that goal is, that we're not going to just continue moving the goal all along, which is what we've historically done. So.
All right. Thank you, Sean. All right. We're going to now move on to item 4E, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is an item you've seen twice before. These are the A through F appeals from the most recent release of letter grades. Historically, we've had 2 meetings of the A through F Appeals Committee to wrap up appeals. This year, there was a 3rd meeting needed because of some scheduling issues. So this is the final batch of appeals recommended by the Appeals Committee for the board to approve. And thank you, huge thank you again to Dr. Hagerman, Dr. Clay, and Member Catanese for serving on this committee. And Jessica is available if there are any questions.
Do we have any questions? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion that the board approve A to F Appeals Committee's recommendation, rationales, and conditions as provided?
So moved.
We'll say Member Kavekis as first and President Haley as a second. Is that okay? All right.
Sounds good.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Now we're going to move on to 4F. Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. With us today is Colette Chapman from the Exceptional Student Services team at the Arizona Department of Education. Colette's here to present guidance developed by the department for students with disabilities in graduation. This is a follow-up to our September 25 board meeting where Colette presented on students with disabilities in graduation, answering some board questions. In that meeting, the board did ask the department to develop guidance related to that topic, and Colette is here to present that guidance today. Colette?
Good morning, Superintendent Horn, President Haley, Dr. Hagerman, and members of the board. The board requested an update on the presentation that I did in September with regard to graduation and students with disabilities. Today, I'm going to walk through that presentation and provide current updates. The board also raised additional questions, and I will be presenting on them later on in the presentation. So the first question from the board, can I do this? Okay. The first question from the board in September is what guidance is available to schools related to the State Board of Education rule change that notifies parents of students with disabilities about graduation? In October of 2024, the Board of Education adopted a rule to address parent concerns about the lack of awareness of graduation decisions made by the school. So this new rule requires individualized education program teams inform the parents with disabilities about graduation at least 1 year prior to the anticipated graduation date. So this slide is a reminder of what ADE special education did after that rule was adopted in 24. We provided a notice to public schools. We sent out a memorandum that delineated the responsibilities of the districts and charters as well as the state for the responsibilities for this rule. We've have a dedicated web page for the new rule, and we have it up on our website. We've had regional and virtual trainings. We continue to do that. We had 250 schools attend our trainings. We also trained on this at our IDEA conference in 2025. And of course, we always have communication with in-circle families. Those staff participate in statewide trainings and assist then in providing information to the parents. Okay, the update. The rule change information was added to the revised Arizona Department of Education Special Education Graduation Technical Assistance document. We call this the graduation ASTAS document. So the rule is now in that document. And of course, we continue to provide professional and development to schools on the rule change as part of technical assistance, as part of our monitoring special education programs, and in secondary transition trainings. A member of the board asked about stakeholder involvement in the graduation ASTAS document that was just revised in February of 2026. Please remember, except for the new rule change, some funding information, and information on A through F, most of the graduation information in that document has been trained on for over a decade. So we've had a lot of attorneys, legal experts look at the existing document and for their approval. We did have some informal stakeholder involvement through communication with Encircle families. And we also had targeted special education administrators and some school psychologists look at the document, and they were selected because of their ability to provide prompt and clear feedback, because they had knowledge about their previous experience and use of the guidance previous to the updated version. So the feedback that we collect is with regard to clarity, readability, and sequencing of the document. Here's the second question posed by the board in September. In addition to information provided by the ADE Accountability and Research section, does ADE Special Education provide any guidance on the A through F accountability system and impact related to students with disabilities and graduation? So the A through F accountability system was revised so that it does not penalize schools for students with disabilities who graduate in extended cohorts, acknowledging that students with disabilities may require longer or more time to graduate. So at that time, we started working with the ADE Chief Accountability Officer. And as a result, the updated information is we added the A through F accountability and graduation for students with disabilities to the graduation technical assistance document. And information about A through F accountability and graduation for students with disabilities served as a core section in our December 1st graduation memo. The December 1st graduation memo, I believe all of you board members have a copy, was guidance for planning graduation pathways for students with disabilities. And with regard to this graduation memo, stakeholder involvement and input occurred when training was provided by the field and was accomplished through survey questions of those who participated. The third question posed by the board for September is, are students allowed to attend high school through age 22 to receive transition services, even if they have completed their academic graduation requirements? And our answer to this is yes. Oops, I'll change the slide. It's the school's choice if they want to continue to support students beyond graduation. Because once students have graduated, they are no longer entitled to a special education services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The legal protections available for students and their families with disabilities under IDEA no longer apply, and continued services provided after graduation are not eligible for state or federal funding. For example, average daily membership. And we have that in statute 15-901. I'll try to explain ADM here. states, it states that a part-time high school student is a student enrolled in less than 4 subjects that count toward graduation, as those requirements are defined by the state board. That paragraph goes on to count 3 such subjects as 0.75 ADM, 2 as 0.50, and so on. So 0 such subjects would be 0 counting for funding. So students would not receive funding if the schools chose to continue to provide services, if the school wanted to do that. Keep in mind that when we go out and monitor special education programs, we're making sure that the IEPs or the individualized education programs meet federal and state requirements. We're not evaluating public school graduation decisions for compliance. Another question posed by the board: is an individualized education program team allowed to map out a course of study that is a combination of graduation courses and transition services past 4 years if that is what is most important for a student with a disability? And the answer is, of course, yes. A student who has not completed graduation requirements necessary to earn a high school diploma still has the right to receive special education and related services. So where we need to look here is at flexible courses of study and the planning that may include extended courses over time, providing partial credits for completion, and developing new courses with transition skills content. And courses that support transition services can be aligned with ADE course catalog if they are sufficiently aligned to the academic standards. An update to that question. ADE provided professional development to special educators, including secondary transition and the Special Education Advisory Panel. This panel, it's called CEAP, we call it CEAP, is comprised of parents of students with disabilities and also adults with disabilities. They comprise over 50% of that panel. There was a training regarding practical implementation of the development of courses of study based on the diverse student needs, and this was completed and modeled by a local special education director. And at the end, then the CEAP members had room to ask questions, provide their suggestions, and these trainings have all happened within a span of December through March, through today. Standards and ESS leadership met and developed the ADE Joint Graduation Memo and reviewed survey responses provided by special educators who participated in the training. And we're continuing to work on guidance and resource documents for the field, and we hope that that will be rolled out sometime this summer. Are schools able to offer standalone transition courses and or contract with standalone transition providers? And our answer hasn't changed. Yes, public schools can offer standalone courses and contract with authorized special education providers. We need to make sure accurate reporting and adherence to special education statute. It's still important. So if a public school wanted to contract with the standalone transition services, they would need to develop a course that could be included in a pathway that leads to a high school graduation diploma. could be an elective. And it just depends on the content of training and curriculum provided by the provider. Here's an update. ADE ESS will continue to work with and partner with K-12 standards to develop the following. Guiding questions. Special education can use the students, families, and counselors to plan courses of studies. Materials, special education administrators can use with leadership to increase awareness and support in any changes to promote flexibility within the course of study for students with disabilities. We are developing generalized training materials, and we will upload all of these created materials into Arizona Digital Education Library. ADEL is what that's called, and that's within the department. So everybody will have access to those training materials. And we're also continuing to brainstorm additional training opportunities with different audiences, such as career and technical education. Their conferences in the summer, participate in the K through 12 conferences, as well as the IDEA conference that that special education puts on. Here's a new question from the board. When does graduation officially occur for a student? So you can read the slide. But graduation in Arizona occurs when a student completes the coursework and competency requirements established by the State Board of Education. State statutes and board rule clearly outline the required courses, credits, and responsibilities for graduation. The board sets a minimum standards, including a requirement of 22 credits. While school districts and charters have local control, so they can define graduation criteria within those standards. Okay. Now I'm going to discuss the risks of delaying or withholding a diploma. Once requirements are met, schools should not delay or withhold a diploma. Doing so can violate IDEA, Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. These laws ensure equal access to educational benefit. And if a student has met all of the requirements, withholding the diploma can be interpreted as denying access to the same opportunities that any other student would have. Okay, here's a new State Board of Education question. How does ADE interpret the use of the word eligible in Board Rule R7-2-302.6? I will read in part. It says, students placed in special education classes through 12 are eligible to receive a high school diploma upon completion of graduation requirements. In this rule, eligible means the student stands in the same position as any other student who completes graduation requirements. It simply establishes that students receiving special education services cannot be excluded from earning a diploma if they meet requirements. It's a protective purpose, confirming that placement in special education does not disqualify a student from earning a regular diploma and preventing schools from treating, and it prevents schools from treating students with disabilities differently. Eligibility is triggered by completion of graduation requirements, and once met, the student is qualified for a diploma. The school may not impose any additional requirements, and the school may not be withheld, and a diploma may not be withheld on the basis of a disability. Okay, here's another state board question that's new. Are there examples of other states that allow students with disabilities to attend high school after completing graduation requirements to receive transition services? I looked up different states and what they do, and it's usually because their state statutes specifically outline what they can and cannot do. So it depends on how how graduation is defined. But here's Florida, we know that they have multiple pathways, maybe 7 for all students. Some have employment-based diploma options. California has an alternate pathway, allows students to graduate by meeting criteria defined in the IEP. Oregon has a modified diploma specifically for students who cannot meet requirements, even with accommodation. So some states are reducing the credit requirement. I know that I've sent the board letter to White. I think that addresses the cautionary tales of often having multiple options for graduation. Okay. Whoops. Going back, a new state Board of Education question. Recommendations regarding related services after graduation. So in Arizona, once a student with a disability graduates from high school or otherwise exits services, then the responsibility of support shifts from the school to the parent and the student and community-based agencies. So the exact pathway depends on the individual disabilities and goals and eligibility. So adult services, and it's so very important when parents and schools and transition students are preparing, that they include these adult providers in their transition process. So there's vocational rehabilitation, higher education supports in community colleges, Medicaid funding services support daily living, the developmental disability services for individuals who qualify with developmental disabilities, workforce and community programs. So there's a whole host of adult services that it should be a smooth and easy transition from school to work or to post-secondary education. That's what our hope is. So with that, do I have any questions?
Thank you, Colette.
Okay.
My first question is, when was the guidance publicly posted for comment, and how long was it open for comment?
For which comment?
The guidance that came out in February.
That wasn't posted for public comment. The only time that we for special education go out for public comment is what's required by the federal government, and that is if there's a change in law, or a change in policy. Remember the dispute resolution? That was pretty big. That went out for public comment. Our state performance plan goes out for public comment to everybody. But once guidance is posted, well, we do ask, we work with Encircle Families, and they, of course, they gave us feedback. All these people gave us feedback, and it takes, it really delays like a huge public comment for the graduation ASTAS document. It would have taken 3 or 4 more months for us to get this information out. And so that said, if you have any comments, you can always contact me. You can, special education has an ESS inbox. We also have somewhere where you can post a public comment on our website. Every school, every charter has a program specialist assigned to them. So if any school or charter, they can contact us and provide input. And then Encircle Families as well. They're very good about making our guidance documents parent friendly.
I think there's a reason why the federal government requires it, because it's important to get feedback from the public. And I sat on CEAP for 3 years, and there's no public comment taken there either. And I love Encircle Families, consider them personal friends and colleagues, but they don't have the broadest of reach. None of the attorneys or advocates that I work with had any access to these documents before they were released or any opportunity to feedback. So I mean, I guess one thing is I'm begging as we move forward, all the ESS memos, guidance documents, that we get public feedback and not targeted because you can't always get it through trainings. And especially because some people aren't always going to be honest in those trainings, especially if they're the ones being monitored in the long run.
Yeah.
But I really would beg the department, and we've talked about this in the other topics. We've talked about ELL. There's a variety of topics we have discussed in the importance of public feedback. And I just wish we could do it as high here because, so for example, on slide 7, you indicate that, or the department indicates that what we already knew, that the A to F graduation rate system, the intent document was to not penalize schools for extent. Yet the guidance document specifically says, I'm quoting, the revised accountability model includes multiple graduation cohorts, each with a different weight. That was the exact opposite of what we intended at the state board.
Okay.
Because I mean, the current model is that the weights are graduated, like if they graduate in 4 years, it's at 5%, I think, and it graduates down. And the intent was to say that doesn't apply to students with disabilities because under federal and state law, they can stay in a school, shouldn't be penalized. But I'm saying that could have been something that we would have caught if we had put for public comment. But I think we need to address that because it contradicts what we did.
Executive Director Ross, I see you wanting to say something.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Member Kravickas, the current system does not penalize for students with disabilities. I understand if perhaps that's not clear in the verbiage, and that's something we can definitely address. But there is no penalty for students with disabilities graduating beyond 4 years in the current A through F system.
I appreciate that, and we've talked about it, and we can talk to Sean about the technical manual. But the guidance document that we're reviewing today says that the new accountability model includes multiple graduation cohorts, each with a different weight, which has told the field, and some of the folks who've seen this, that the current system is in place, that they will get penalized. So it's just I'm just pointing that out in the guidance document here of something that may need to be addressed. I appreciate you addressing, I lost track of slide numbers. Maybe it was slide 19, when graduation legally occurs. I think the law is still very unclear. The statutes that we've discussed back and forth over the year are unclear. And to me, what's most important is none of those statutes, whether it be 701 or 901, apply to students with disabilities. They apply to all students. So that's kind of my question then, is what kind of guidance has the department issued to all high schools? Because if you take that argument to its logical conclusion, the second a student hits 22 credits or whatever the district has applied, they no longer receive funding or graduated funding, which I don't think is the case. But I want to make sure that we're having that conversation broader and not just for students with disabilities, because 901 applies to all students.
President Haley, Member Kravickas, remember that special education students are general education students first. And so these statutes do apply to all students in Arizona. As far as I think it was your question, does the department stop funding students without disabilities as soon as they meet their credit requirements? And the answer is that schools and charters need to follow the same law, that if the credits or the courses that they're in do not meet graduation requirements, then they don't get paid ADM.
So is there a cap on credits then for funding?
Well, I don't know about that, but I would say, given what I know, is that the board has 22 credits that you have, and once somebody has met those credits along with their state and local or their local governing board's criteria, they have graduated. So there wouldn't be any ADM for additional credits.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. I don't think that's clear to the field because we've only been talking about in the context of ESS. So I think we might need clarity on that.
Okay.
On slide 21, you referenced State Board Rule R72302.6, and it hasn't been touched in decades. I don't know what the exact date is, but I think it needs to be amended because it says the local school district governing board or charter school shall be responsible for developing a course of study and graduation requirements for all students placed in SPED programs. But I had been told that letter to white is exactly why you can't do that. You can't, the school board cannot set graduation requirements for students with disabilities. They have to be for all students. So I think that it kind of highlights the need for an amendment. But it also has just, which I'm wondering if it's literally a typo, because it says students placed in special education classes through 12, which is just kind of odd.
Yeah.
And it also implies that they're just special education classes. I mean, 70% of students with disabilities are in gen ed classes all day. So I just want to highlight that I think some amendments to that rule need to be addressed at some point.
Okay.
And I probably have more questions, but my last one is, and this is the big one, and I appreciate you addressing what other states have done because I've done the same thing. I've looked, and it's not something I've really wanted to introduce, but I don't know if we're at that point then of thinking about alternate diplomas or pathways, which Arizona's never had. I know that the changes under ESSA made it a little bit more, I don't want to say easier palatable, but there were significant changes under ESSA, so you're not penalized as much under the four-year graduation cohort. But I don't know if that's what we need to entertain at that point for a program like a Project Search to still exist, like they've completed their classes, but yet they can still participate. Because if not, the only other option is, and I mean, I guess it's kind of a moot question, but a family or a student could just opt out of a diploma then, I'm guessing. I mean, I could just tell my school, well, Vanessa doesn't need a general diploma, we'll just get a certificate of completion of some sort, and then she can stay and go do a 1-year transition program or something like that. Just trying to figure out what the legal options are.
There'd be no funding.
President Haley, Member Kravickas, I think when you run down those type of roads, you're at risk for violating like not only IDEA or Section 504 discrimination laws, because if a student can truly earn a regular high school diploma, then that's exactly what they should be doing. Now, if the IEP team determines through their course of study that, hey, it's going to take someone maybe 5, 6, 7 years before they do get a regular high school diploma, that's different. But it's never good to hold somebody back who's truly deserving and wants to earn a regular high school diploma.
The other difficulty that I hear from parents, I've raised it before, is the lack of, I appreciate the Transition Tuesday slides I saw that you guys did and kind of providing those ideas, but kids change their minds.
Yeah.
Even as a parent, things don't always go the way we thought they would with kids. So you could start high school thinking, oh yes, my child's going to need 7 years for sure. But after 5 years, they're done. And now they don't have the credits to graduate. So I'm also concerned of that kind of scenario.
Okay.
Because then I don't know what happens at that point.
Okay. President Haley, Member Kravickas, if a student with a disability does not have the requirements to graduate, then they would not graduate. And I think that we're talking about all students, all general education students, including special education students, who sometimes run into that. They, freshman year, they think they want to do one thing, have to change course, maybe sophomore, and then their junior year, they're really sure that they know what to do, And so I think every child runs into the same situation as that. The ability to choose electives and such, but that's why when you're doing IEPs, or when you're completing them, you really have to look at the student's strengths and preferences and interest every year, and make sure that this is, the right path. And their strengths are huge, because sometimes what they like to do may not always be a strength.
Right.
So and that's with anybody.
I guess I'll just close with saying, I know the main focus of this conversation has been about transition services, but for me, it's really not. I mean, I don't lose sight of the fact that I think it's only 3% of 11th graders with disabilities are proficient in ELA. I think it's 3, don't quote me. I know it's 8% at 8th grade, because that's easy to remember. So you figure 8% of 8th graders going into high school. To me, transition services are almost moot if they can't read at grade level or read at all. I mean, the families I hear from, in fact, I got 2 weeks ago, the child's reading at a first grade level and has no method of communication, and they're giving them a diploma. So, I mean, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that it's not just about transition and adult services and employment. It's about basic literacy. So I don't want to lose sight of that sometimes they need that extra time just simply for academics, not just transition. And I just want to ensure that our schools and our families have the most flexibility they possibly can to design the programs that our students need, and just beg the department to seek feedback from the field. There are 110,000 students with disabilities, their families, all the attorneys and advocates that support them that are well-trained on the law, those last two, and not always the families, that can provide feedback for really what's happening in the field, because sometimes it's a different side of the story.
You lost your mic again. Sorry. Your mic.
Oh.
There you go. You're good.
Okay. President Haley, Member Kravickas, we do several trainings for the practitioners, for the special education directors, for the teachers, transition service specialists. We are constantly training. I think if you look on our website, and you probably have, of all the trainings out there, and that those who are our stakeholders, the boots on the ground. So we want to make sure that they're comfortable and know what's required of them. As far as public comment goes, of course, it's or stakeholder involvement. Of course, we want to be transparent and get people's input, but that's ongoing for us. You can do it at any time, but in order to get documents out timely, to open up like the graduation document, I can tell you that it would be way down months. And we don't want to do that. Right now, from September to March 30th here today, we have been at lightning speed as far as government work goes. And so if you, like I say, if you want to comment, everybody's welcome to write us and comment and say, hey, this doesn't work for me. In Circle Families, I know that they work closely with parents, and they can, I don't know their plans if they're going to open it up, for public comment, but we have received comment from like CAP, the Special Education Advisory Panel. Over 50% are people with disabilities or parents of students with disabilities. They provided input. And we did a survey on our graduation memo, and we had a lot of survey responses from the rural areas, from Cochise County, from just all over the state. So we are reaching our stakeholders, but I think you want to be included as a stakeholder.
I'm saying I want to make sure we're reaching all families, but in particular, the advocates and the attorneys out there that represent them. None of us had any opportunity for feedback. We just saw it when it was posted, and then I sent it out to the group I know. I understand how cumbersome it is. I mean, we go through rulemaking here at the board, and we know how long that is. But I think there's a compromise between having it out there for public there's got to be a way to get public feedback. I'm not saying it's me. I'm just saying I know a lot of attorneys and trained advocates that are very well versed on the law that would love to opine on a variety of different things that ESS puts out. But once they're out there, it kind of has the impression that it's done. There's no opportunity for feedback. There's nothing there. It's done. So I just would beg for an opportunity for public feedback on all of the documents.
All right. If it's okay, I'd like to move on to item 4G, Policy Director Yanos. Thank you.
Perfectly fine. Yeah, you're welcome.
Good afternoon, President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, members of the board. I am happy to say that I do not have a substantive legislative update or any piece of legislation to bring to you all. So I'm available for questions, and the next time that we're here will be beyond the 100th day of session.
So we have our fingers crossed that there'll be something close to a budget.
I'm not gonna comment.
Oh, all right. I won't sucker you into that.
Never happened.
No. All right. So we're going to now move on to item 6, call to the public. This is a time for the public to comment on items listed in the educator discipline section of the agenda. Please note that Arizona law prohibits the board from discussing or taking legal action on matters raised during a call to the public that are not on the current meeting agenda. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board during the 1-hour public comment period. Furthermore, speakers are not allowed to cede their time to another speaker, and personal attacks are not appropriate. Deputy Taplante, do we have any requests to speak?
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent, members of the board, nobody has registered for this call to the public.
Wow. All right. So we now move on to item 6. The consent agenda for the enforcement actions will be taken in a single motion. If there's an item or items from the consent agenda from the enforcement actions that a board member would like to pose or discuss, does anyone want to pull anything? All right. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve items 6A1 through 6A9, 6B1, 6C1 and 6C2, 6D1 and 6D2, 6D4 through 6D7, 6D9 through 6D19, and 6E1? Do I have that motion?
So moved.
And we'll take President Haley as the second. That's okay. The latency of your Wi-Fi. All in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Motion approved. All right. Where am I on my agenda? Sorry, I'm lost on the agenda now.
Item 7.
All right. So we now move to item 7. Is there an item or items from the consent agenda that a board member would like to pull and discuss? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve items 7A1 through 7A12, 7B1 through 7B6, and 7C1? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, so we'll say President Haley takes the motion and Superintendent Horn for a second. Okay. All in favor? Aye. All right. And now we Now we move on to the executive, to item 8, Executive Director Ross.
President Haley, Vice President Hagerman, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, thank you for an effective and efficient board meeting. Our next meeting is Monday, April 27th at 9 o'clock. Take care, everybody.
All right, so the meeting is adjourned at 12:36. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Superintendent.